Good evening, everybody, and welcome to the October 14th meeting of the Thousand Oaks City Council. Can I have everybody please join me for the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Can I please have the city clerk do the roll call?
Councilmember Fox is absent this evening. Councilmember Gillette is absent this evening. Mayor Pro Tem Glancy.
Here.
Mayor Irwin.
Here.
And Councilmember Bill De La Pena is expected.
I just want to explain, Councilmember Fox is, of course, with the LA Fire Department. He is busy on the fires this evening, and Councilmember Gillette is having some personal issues right now, and he will be back for the next meeting. Item number 4, request for continuance of any public hearing or agenda item, and the 11B, Council on Aging annual report, is going to be moved up to prior to the department awards, the reports. And next we have item 5, special presentations and announcements. And before we begin our special presentations tonight, we were going to have our Fire Chief Mike LaPlante speak to us about the status of the fires, but instead he is busy on the fires, so we're going to have our City Manager Scott Mitnick give us an update. Mr. Mitnick?
Madam Mayor, members of the council, again, I was just talking with Chief LaPlante, and he sends his regrets. He did get called back to work on the Cessna fire. That is, part of it is approaching Simi Valley. The city does not appear to be threatened, although it is moving toward the northwest, is that right, or northeast portion of the city. Of that city, so he's dealing with that issue. Here in Thousand Oaks, we've been very, very fortunate and very lucky that the winds did calm down last night and the fire has not worked its way over here. Just for the council's benefit and for the public, the city has been gearing up for this. We did open our emergency operations center. We have not activated it beyond the low level. And the normal procedures that we go through in terms of filling up all of the vehicles with gasoline, filling up all the water reservoirs, being on standby to provide assistance to the public safety departments, and the police department's been busy assisting with some evacuations that took place in other communities. And our firefighters based here in Thousand Oaks have obviously been working the incident. And where Canal Creek South is, off of Jans and the 23 freeway, some of you may have noticed dozens and dozens and dozens of fire apparatus from all over California. That is a staging center for the various fire departments working the incident, and they stand prepared should it come this way. So we are lucky, we're on standby, and we'll keep our fingers crossed that it doesn't come this way. And to the best of our ability, Council, we are providing updates either on Channel 10 TOTV for those Time Warner customers and Verizon customers, as well as on the city's website. So there hasn't been a whole lot of information out there because we're relatively safe at this time. So we also are very appreciative to the men and women from the various fire departments from all over California that have been working this incident as well as the other fire incidents. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mitnick. And now we will begin the special presentation portion of our council meeting. And just give you a moment to step up to the podium, please. Can you hear me? Okay, now it is. Our first presentation tonight is a proclamation in recognition of Cultural Harmony Month. I would like to invite our city's Associate Human Resources Analyst Elena Keenan to join me. The City of Thousand Oaks recognizes and values the diverse ethnic and cultural heritage of our community members. Each year in October, our city employees take the opportunity to share their cultures with coworkers. They celebrate the diversity of our workforce and recognize the valuable contributions that each person makes to our city team. I would like to ask Elena to please tell us more about Cultural Harmony Month. Elena?
Thank you, Mayor Irwin. Good evening, council members, city managers, city attorneys, city staff. As Mayor Irwin mentioned, my name is Elena Keenan. I'm from the Human Resources Department, and it's my pleasure and privilege to be a member of the city's Employee Human Relations Committee and involved in the 4th annual celebration of the Employees Cultural Harmony Month. With me this evening, standing on guard behind me, are other members of the Employee Human Relations Committee. I'd like to just briefly take a moment to introduce them. To my right is Sharon Meyer from the City Clerk Department, and behind me, Diane Vanderkamp from the Finance Department. To my left is Linda Berry from the Library, as well as Tony Santillo from the City Attorney's Office. And we represent a few of the employee members. We do have representatives from each department here at the city. And our role as a committee is to plan, to organize various events and activities related to Cultural Harmony Month and related to the cultural diversity represented among the city employees here at the City of Thousand Oaks. So as a focal point for that celebration, we have International Day scheduled for the afternoon of October 29th. And during that celebration, employees here at the city will share appetizers, desserts that represent their heritage, as well as we're privileged to have a variety of entertainers from local cultural associations who have graciously given of their time to support our endeavor in our International Day event. And I would like to take a moment on behalf of the Employee Human Relations Committee and the employees at the City of Thousand Oaks to thank the council for your support, for your enthusiasm of this endeavor and of cultural diversity and Cultural Harmony Month that we are celebrating in October. Thank you so much.
Elena, thank you to you and your committee on your excellent work. And here we have a proclamation in honor of Cultural Harmony Month. And we will be presenting. Okay. We'll see. Come over here, Linda. Let's get Linda in. Can you see everybody? Okay. Thank you. And wanted to recognize Mina Leyba, too, who joined us late. She's from the city manager's office, and she's a terrific addition to our employee member committee. Thank you. Okay, for our second presentation tonight, we are going to spotlight one of our city's successful open space protection programs. We will take a moment to tell you, our citizens, what you can do to help keep our open space beautiful. I would like to introduce Conejo Open Space Conservation Agency Director Kristen Ford to tell us about the annual Trail Work Day. Hello, Kristen.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, and good evening, members of the council. I'm excited to announce that our 18th annual Conejo Open Space Trail Work Day will take place on Saturday, October 18th. Registration begins at 7:30 a.m. at Conejo Community Park on Gainsborough Road. We're hoping that lots of volunteers from the community will come out and help us with the trail work. This year we'll be creating new sections of trails in the North Ranch Open Space and the Potrero Ridge Open Space, and we also have some projects at the Conejo Valley Botanic Garden that are suitable for families with young children. Anyone who wants to help should meet at the Conejo Community Park at the Botanic Garden entrance off Gainsborough Road at 7:30 a.m. to fill out volunteer forms, get your trail work assignments, pick up breakfast sacks, and board the buses for the trails. We'll do the trail work from about 8 a.m. until noon, and then ride the buses back to Conejo Community Park for a free thank you lunch for the volunteers. Door prizes, including a brand-new mountain bike, will be awarded during the lunch. If you're interested in participating, please dress appropriately and bring gloves, hiking boots, and a water bottle. We'll provide all of the other tools that you'll need for the trail work, and we'll also provide a short training and safety lesson before we send you out onto the trails. Costco Rangers and other experienced trail crew members will be assigned to each of the work groups to provide supervision and guidance to the volunteers. The Conejo Open Space Trail Workday is always rewarding, and it's definitely lots of fun. I encourage anyone who enjoys using the trails or appreciates the city's fabulous open space system to come out and join us on Saturday. Right now, the weather forecast looks good for the weekend, but if it's raining or if there's a red flag fire weather warning that day, we'll postpone the trail work until the following Saturday, October 25th. For more information about Trail Work Day or for last-minute updates on whether the Trail Work Day has been postponed, please call the Costco Rangers at 805-402-9550 or visit our partner, the Conejo Open Space Foundation's website at www.cosf.org. Thank you.
Thank you, Kristen. And during our first presentation this evening, I commented on our city's outstanding employees, and it gives me great pleasure to announce that our city's associate analyst working with teens and seniors was recently chosen by Ventura County Star as one of the, or I should say as the hardest working employee in Ventura County. Francine Hill? Francine has a lot of fans here. Francine Spriegel moved to the city's Community and Cultural Services Department 2 years ago, where she has done an excellent job enhancing our senior and youth programs. And I also want to say that she did graduate from Cal Lutheran with her second master's degree, and I have told everybody because I think it's so amazing, she was also the class valedictorian. I don't know how you sleep with everything that you do. Her energy and enthusiasm have brought many positive results. The revitalization of the senior nutrition program through the addition of new holiday menus, refurbishing the Marquee Cafe at the Goebel Senior Center to reflect a new theme, coordinating fundraising events such as Cinco de Mayo parties for seniors, expanding the Senior of the Year Award to include dinner and entertainment, and completing the survey on senior needs. Francine is also doing an excellent job with our teens completing the city's master plan. She is truly someone we should all be very, very proud of. And we have accommodation in honor of Francine. And actually, I've already said all this, so I don't think that we need to read it. Francine, congratulations. And Francine, would you like to add anything?
I would.
Okay, great.
I would. Might turn it a microphone. Thank you, Madam Mayor, council members, city manager, and staff. I'd like to thank those that nominated and voted for me, because I know the most people, and the Ventura County Star staff, not only for this recognition program, but because they really do a great job at advertising all of our community programs and services. I'm blessed with the opportunity to work for a city that, quite frankly, rocks. We have incredible leadership. I have fellow staff members who support each other's programs, and even after 10, 20, and 30 years, they find the time to go to leadership programs and other training to improve their already extraordinary service. We also have the opportunity to work with extraordinary staff from other agencies like the Park District and the School District, and nonprofit and for-profit businesses that support our programs. I also have a really cool family that not only gives graciously of my time, but steps up to the plate and volunteers when I'm short volunteers. So, and speaking of volunteers, the city has lots of them. We have youth and adults that work full-time and still manage to volunteer countless hours, and we have our seniors that thought they retired, only to find out that they are now volunteering full-time. So I'd like to thank them and all the people that participate in our programs and make them successful. And there's a bunch of people here that if you guys could all stand so we can say thank you for making our program successful, that'd be great. Thank you. Without you, this wouldn't be possible.
To end our special presentations tonight, we have a fun treat for everybody. Cabrillo Music Theater, one of our theater's resident companies, will provide entertainment for everybody with songs from The King and I. And I would like to ask Carol Nussbaum to join me. You don't look like Carol.
Thank you, Mayor. I've been mistaken for a lot of people, but not Carol. I'm representing her.
Oh, okay. I would, well, before Carol speaks, or Carol's representative, yes, I would like to congratulate Cabrillo's on their exciting news. In September 2008, Cabrillo was nominated by the LA Stage Alliance for 18 Ovation Awards. The LA Stage Alliance presents the only peer-judged awards in Los Angeles. This is an exceptional honor, and we all know that our peers are the toughest judges. And tonight we have a, I can present you with the,
sure, I'll pass it on.
Okay.
That's why I'm here.
And we have a accommodation recognizing Cabrillo on their 18 nominations, including Best Musical Productions, Best Direction, Best Choreography, Best Lead, Featured Artists, Musical Direction, Lighting, and Sound Design. And we really appreciate the performances that Cabrillo brings. I know the last one I saw here was Singing in the Rain. It was really incredible. So are you going to be showing us something? Okay, and speaking? And
introducing very quickly.
Right.
Thank you very much for this. Good evening, everyone. Yes, as you've all observed, I'm not Carol Nussbaum. I am representing Carol Nussbaum, but hello, fellow Thousand Oakers. I'm just here on her behalf to make two quick announcements. One to second what Mayor Irwin said. The Cabrillo Music Theater, which I am a part also, is honored to receive those 18 Ovation Awards. These are the most awards nominees that have been given to any Los Angeles or California-based theater. This is the highest honor for a Cabrillo Music Theater, and we're very happy to note that. Also, I wanted to announce that The King and I, the great Rodgers and Hammerstein musical, will be the next Cabrillo production. It opens this Friday, October 17th. It runs for 10 performances through the 25th of October. And the tickets are on sale now at the box office or through Ticketmaster. We hope you all make your plans to join for that production. Also, on our agenda tonight, we wish to extend a little bit of entertainment for you all. Following The King and I will be the Neil Sedaka musical, which is called Breakin' Up Is Hard to Do. That will be following King and I. And tonight we have Mr. Dion Mial, who many of you may have seen already in the Cabrillo Music Theater's production of Smokey Joe's Cafe. Mr. Mial will be singing one of the songs from that Neil Sedaka musical. He's going to be accompanied by Jennifer Russell, and the song Dion will be singing is Laughter in the Rain. Dion Mial.
With my baby, it starts to rain, it begins to pour. Without an umbrella, we're soaked to the skin, and I feel a shiver run up my spine. I feel the warmth of a hand in mine. Ooh, I hear laughter in the walking hand in hand with the one I love. Ooh, how I love the rainy days and the happy way I feel inside. And after a while we run under a tree, and I turn to her and she kisses me. And there with the beat of the rain on the leaves, softly she breathes and I close my eyes, sharing our love under stormy skies. Ooh, I hear laughter in the rain, walking hand in hand with the one I love. Ooh, how I love the rainy days and the happy way I feel inside. Ooh, I hear laughter in the rain, walking hand in hand with the one I love. Ooh, how I love the rainy days and the happy way I feel inside.
I think it's over. That was a great job. Again, if you have a chance to see one of Cabrillo's productions, please do. The last one they did was really excellent. All right, item number 6 is public comments, and for our first speaker, we are going to, well, actually, can I have the city clerk please announce public comments?
This is the time and place for public comments. A speaker card is available for those wishing to address the City Council regarding items on the agenda or on a subject within the city's jurisdiction. All speakers for public hearings shall be called and heard during the public hearing. Pursuant to council standards of operation, the mayor may assist any speaker from straying into areas not within the city's jurisdiction. All remarks should be addressed to the City Council as a whole. Under state law, issues discussed under public comments can have no action unless listed on the agenda and may be referred to the city manager for administrative action or scheduled on a subsequent agenda. All documents for city council and the official city records should be presented to the city clerk prior to speaking. Speakers are requested to state their name and city of residence for the record. 9 people have presented cards, and pursuant to council standards, speakers are allowed 3 minutes. The yellow light displays when you have 1 minute remaining.
Thank you, Ms. Lawrence. Our first speaker tonight is our police chief, Dennis Carpenter. And Chief Carpenter will be followed by Kathy Laurie.
Good evening, Madam Mayor and members of council. My name is Dennis Carpenter. I'm the Thousand Oaks Police Chief. Tonight I'm here to talk to you about Crime Prevention Month. In 1994, the National Crime Prevention Council designated October as the Crime Prevention Month. The purpose of Crime Prevention Month is to educate the public, create new partnerships, and enhance existing partnerships, and to illustrate past and current achievements. In 2007, there were 1.4 million violent crimes and 9 million victims of identity theft in America. Hence, crime prevention is only successful when the citizens, businesses, and community become involved and honor their commitment for the betterment of the entire community and society. People play a vital role in assisting law enforcement in keeping the residents, homes, and neighborhoods safe. Objectives include the dispersal of knowledge regarding the establishing and maintaining safer neighborhoods and communities, important crime prevention and safety messages, volunteerism, to continue year-round support for constant crime prevention activities and awareness, and victimization with respective referral and support groups. Crime Prevention Month gives exceptional opportunities to reach many different people, businesses, and organizations. The school system, in conjunction with Red Ribbon Week, in partnership with the Thousand Oaks Police Department's school resource officers, is also a wonderful approach to make connections and impressionable children who can be exposed to positive contacts with the officers and while teaching them public safety. So we're going to have an open house at our police station on Thursday, October the 30th, at 6 p.m. in the evening. And that police station is located at 2101 East Olson Road in Thousand Oaks. It's an opportunity to thank the public and explain the importance to the public of their role and efforts in keeping the city one of the best in the nation. It's an opportunity to promote our City Watch and Business Watch, which are two electronic information sources or avenues that we have. We're going to introduce to the people that are there our dispatch system and allow them to explain their role in crime prevention. We will present information on or about the internet, substance abuse, elder abuse, identity theft, frauds, and scams. I see the yellow lights going on, so I thought I'd never say that, but I said it. And endorse new neighborhood watch programs, which we'd like for you to be able to sponsor in your community. So we'll give you a tour, do a question and answer period at the police station. You're welcome to come. Mark your calendar, Thursday, October 30th. Thank you very much.
Mr. Carpenter, you had 30 seconds left. You were rushing through way too fast. All right, our next speaker is Kathy Laurie, and Ms. Laurie will be followed by Ronald Ha.
Hi, good evening. I'm Kathy Lowry. I live in the city of Thousand Oaks. I work for the city. I'm your city's bicycle coordinator, and I'm here tonight to remind you and the viewing audience about the first annual Glen Garvin Bicycle Rodeo scheduled for this Saturday. It's free. It starts at 11 o'clock till 4 o'clock in the afternoon. It's at the Teen Center parking lot. We're planning to have a great day. It's open to kids of all ages, teenagers, as well as their parents. We'd like you to come out and practice using a mock Safe Cities bike course. There's going to be a jolly jump. There's going to be tumbling. The Kiwanis are barbecuing. We're going to have a DJ. There's going to be 2 bicycles raffled off. We're just planning for a really great day and a lot of learning about bicycle safety. The only wrinkle right now is because with the fire, the command post is now at Canary Creek South and North parking lot, and if they don't put the fires out, we won't be able to use the parking lot. So there's a chance it may be postponed to another time, but right now we're keeping our fingers crossed and still planning to have it on Saturday. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Ronald Ha, and Mr. Ha will be followed by Robert Alstrom.
My name is Ronald Ha. I reside in Malibu, California. On August 27th, I was assigned the full-time task of driving my 2 grandchildren to and from Newbury Park High School. As I exited Borchardt Road onto North Rieno Road on the east side, I said to myself, what is this traffic jam all about? I finally determined that the traffic jam is caused by the fact that on this section of road, approximately 200 feet from the intersection where the traffic light is for entering the high school, the city is allowing 3 to 4 cars to park there, so people have to deviate around. If the cars were not there, then you could end up with 3 lanes of traffic moving very steadily. The handout which I gave the council and the mayor shows on attachment 1 what the traffic is like. Attachment 2 shows what happens if you don't have the 3 cars parked. If they can park across the street. I have been in contact with the traffic division, but the traffic division fellow feels that removing the parking for the 3 to 4 cars is not warranted. I feel it is warranted, and I told them that I would come to the council meeting and make up my plea. The document which has been given to the council and to the mayor was mailed to Mr. Alonzo on October 1st, stating the fact, I realize you disagree with me, but I disagree with you. So therefore, I was going to go to the council. The last page, I might add, was never forwarded to Mr. Alonzo. It states that should they decide to get rid of the parking for the 3 to 4 cars, then they should consider adding a right-hand turn lane, number 1, and number 2 would be, why not, if you're going to add a right-hand turn lane, why not add a green arrow for turning? And what that does is it allows the cars to keep moving into the school as the cars are exiting at the same time. Thank you very much. If anybody wants any copies, I'll leave them here if there's extra copies. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Ha. Scott. Mr. Mitnick will comment on your request after public comments, Mr. Ha. Mr. Mitnick will comment on your request after we're done with public comments, if you would like to hear what the city manager has to say. Thank you. Okay, Mr. Ahlstrom, followed by Brad.
Bracchiola, I think. Hi. Dear City Councils, my name is Robert Ahlstrom. I'm here today as a resident of Thousand Oaks, and I'm a concerned parent of a 2-year-old at the Roots and Wings Daycare Center. And I was here yesterday and I heard the presentation by the city regarding the proposed changes to the city center. And I understand that the decision is to be made either in November or December, and that you're currently deliberating. And as you deliver on the issue, I want you to consider my story. So my wife and I are both Amgen employees, and the single most important issue when we decided to relocate from Ventura, the city of Ventura, where we were previously living, was quality daycare for our 2-year-old daughter. And the way to go about finding quality daycare is either you go by word of mouth, or as we prefer to do it, by accreditation. And accreditation is something you get from a proven track record of knowing what you're doing, basically. And the NAEYC accreditation is nationally recognized accreditation. And the Roots and Wings are accredited with this operation and with this accreditation. And we are Thousand Oaks residents today because of Roots and Wings. We came here because we had heard that it's a really good program, and we have seen the accreditation that they attain. And it's a highly sought-after program, and that's evidenced by the waiting list that is quite extensive. And as you deliver this, I want you to just consider that you're replacing a known quantity, which is the accredited program, which is highly sought after, has a long waiting list, with something that we just don't know. It doesn't have the proven track record. It doesn't have the accreditation. And so, also on a personal note, there's no guarantee that we will have a spot, which means that we will have to go through the painful process of finding a qualified daycare for our daughter again as these changes occur. And so that's what I had to say. Thank you.
Mr. Brad Petrolia? I'm sorry. I know that this is the second time I'm not pronouncing it correctly. And Brad will be followed by Raymond Mochia. Good evening.
Good evening, members of the City Council. My name is Brad Cracchiola. I live in Agoura Hills, and I'm another parent of a child attending Roots and Wings. As you know, last night there was a meeting where it was explained to many parents that the city is following every legal process in the transition of the Roots and Wings building to the NFL. We know that the city owns the building and has every right to lease it to a new operator. While the city is not obligated or responsible for Roots and Wings' success, this transition is going to be significantly damaging to a company that has provided a great service to the community for over a decade. I believe that the City Council can find a solution that is a win for all parties. There's clearly a greater demand for premium quality child care, particularly infant care, in the city than is currently being provided. It seems to me that this is a perfect opportunity for the City Council to approve the creation of the NFL program, but at another location, perhaps such as one of the schools that will be closing in 2009, such as, for example, the Meadows Elementary School, which is less than 2 miles from City Hall and, according to Google Maps, 4 minutes away. Some of the benefits of a decision like this would be it would still be in keeping with the city's long-term policy to work more closely with the school district, ensures continuity for the children. No children would be displaced, relocated, or subjected to potentially decreased quality of child care. Keep in mind that if Roots and Wings is forced out of the current location, not only will those children potentially have to be relocated, but the low-income state-funded children at Ms. LeBoon's other building will have to be relocated as well. The obvious benefit is more quality child care. Creation of an NFL program at an existing closed school creates 2 high-quality programs. We know that the city is not responsible for what happens to Roots and Wings. We know that the city owns the building and has every right to it. But I believe we can do better than that. Let's be a city that goes beyond our legal obligations and strives for a higher level of excellence. Let's be a city that embraces what is great in our community and protects it. But one that works to ensure the success of our local businesses. Let's be a city that is not afraid to do the extra work to find win-win solutions and the best possible outcome. And let's be a city that finds a way to create more excellent child care locations instead of replacing the one that already helps so many families in the community. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Mochia, followed by Debbie Gregory.
Good evening. My name is Raymond Mocha, a resident of Thousand Oaks who lives in Newbury Park. Thank you, Mayor and City Council, for this opportunity to speak. My vote for Thousand Oaks City Council will be for Al Adam and Holly LaRue. Al understands local economic forces and already serves as a planning commissioner. Holly, a volunteer and full-time parent, is right that we need a trolley on Teal Boulevard for various reasons, but especially if plans go through to double the height of buildings there. I believe Adam and LaRue will consider the public's interest as a whole, long-term, first, when they serve on the City Council. The incumbent candidates, one elected and one appointed, may understand the routines and procedures of city government, but that is not enough for me. I wish them all the luck in the world, and I hope they continue to help out in the community. But they do not represent most of us in the city, and here are 4 reasons why I think this. Number 1, I believe they like the plans to double the height of buildings on T.O. Boulevard to make things vibrant. Vibrant like Queens, New York? I like New York, but I wouldn't want to live there. Number 2, when Supervisor Linda Parks ran for re-election, the incumbents supported her opponent. Parks won by a nearly 2-to-1 margin. The incumbents were on the losing team. Number 3, I'm not convinced, based on what I've seen of the 2 incumbents since they were both on the Planning Commission, that they support sustainable economic growth, nor promote safety and open space as well as Adam and LaRue. And 4, primarily, is the story of Mr. Masry, the top vote-getter in Thousand Oaks history. When he passed away, the person appointed to fill the 3 years remaining on the term, the appointed incumbent candidate, was someone who had attacked Masry and mailers in the past, although I hear he claims he does not recall this. His views are plainly not aligned with those who voted for Masry. An election for Masry's seat would have cost 1/3 what the city spent on furniture. When Councilmember Bill de la Peña presses the election issue or any, the incumbents seem to join in giving her the silent treatment and then proceed to pat themselves on the back for being civil to each other. Everyone who values the vote and public participation must be outraged, and anyone who would go along with this evidently does not value democracy. They would probably go along with Vice President Cheney's paperless elections. Such people are probably also voting for another 100 years of war on the other side of the planet. In today's economy, with hard times a-comin', thank goodness the choice has never been easier. People in Thousand Oaks are lucky to vote for fiscally responsible, conscientious candidates like Al Adam and Holly LaRue. However you vote, ladies and gentlemen, please be informed and vote. Democracy is a language. Use it or lose it. Thank you for allowing me to speak.
Thank you, Mr. Mochia. Debbie Gregory, followed by Chuck Morsa. I'm sorry. Good evening, Ms. Gregory.
Good evening. I'm Debbie Gregory. I'm a resident of Thousand Oaks, and I'm a little bit hoarse, so please indulge me. These are very challenging economic times. People are losing their businesses, their life savings, their retirements, their jobs, their homes, here in Thousand Oaks and all over America. It's very important, more than ever, to watch every cent and to be fiscally conservative. I honestly did not know that local government paid so well and that the city manager and city attorney could become wealthy working in Thousand Oaks. And it's not as though they're not already very well paid. Mr. Mitnick will make $228,000, in addition to all types of perks almost worth as much as his salary, including but not limited to a car, insurance, pension, health club membership, paid time off, and more, including a 15% bonus. Mrs. Albano will now make $203,000 plus an array of perks and a 10% bonus. Allow me to put this in the proper perspective. According to the October 2nd Acorn, if the governor of California took a salary, he would make only $212,000. The state attorney general only makes $184,000. And the Vice President of the United States only makes $208,100. A U.S. Senator or a U.S. Representative only makes $162,100. The Chief Justice of the Supreme Court only makes $208,000. Here is a list, the 2000-2008 ICMA Executive Salary Survey for the position of Chief Administrative Officer for cities. There are over 900 cities. Mr. Mitnick is in the top 1%. He exceeds full-service cities like Phoenix that have police and fire departments. I think if compensation was more reasonable, we could have more money for programs like the program that takes care of our children, and there needs to be reasonable decisions. There's another very important issue. I want every resident of Thousand Oaks to know that when a council member serves only 5 years, they will receive world-class, lifetime medical, dental, and vision for themselves and all of their dependents. Can you believe they receive this for a part-time job only after 5 years? For example, Mr. Glancy, who works full-time in a very well-established dental practice, if he's elected, he won't have to pay another cent for any health, dental, and vision insurance, because we, the people of Thousand Oaks, will be paying for it. Ditto for Mrs. Irwin. Irwin and Glancy have clearly demonstrated by voting for these raises for the city manager and city attorney that they're not fiscally conservative or care about your money or public funds in these challenging times. You, the voters, have the power on November 4th to have the say in this decision and not to fund Irwin and Glancy and their dependents to have better health care benefits than you receive for life. It's time to elect new people, and it's time to change this policy. It does not make sense in a city or in a business. Thank you.
I would actually like to just clarify, because this has been the topic of some discussion, the city manager and city attorney salary. The story was inaccurately, or I should say not fully told in the Acorn newspaper. The city manager is the fourth highest paid city manager in total compensation in Ventura County. We think that that is extremely reasonable. He has done an excellent job. That is what these professionals make. That is the market rate for these professionals. So, and the city attorney is in the same type of situation. We did a full compensation survey, just like is done in the private sector. So that is what I would like to clarify there. And as far as other benefits that city council members make, yes, $18,000 a year, I believe, is our salary. We do not vote in the other benefits. They've been long established, and there have been other council members that have had the same benefits. But to talk about the city manager and the city attorney as highly compensated compared to the rest of the country is completely ridiculous. Fourth in the county, fourth in Ventura County, and the city of Thousand Oaks is a very complicated city to run, and we are very happy with the job that both of them are doing.
Good evening, Mayor and public servants. I'm here on behalf of MANA. Very short on food right now. You folks watching at home, I would appreciate if you get a paper and pencil. I'm going to give you an address or two. I stopped by MANA 2 weeks ago, and their shelves were very thin. And as we all know, the economy is not very good. We have a lot of hungry people in this town. I mean, the income is very high here, but sometimes we tend to forget our neighbors. So I'm going to ask you to write this address down. People that aren't familiar with MANA, they've been here about 30, 35 years and helping our needy families with groceries. You can send a check made out to MANA, M-A-N-N-A, to 3020 Crescent Way in Thousand Oaks, or you can deliver food there. The church I attend is called the Christian Church of Thousand Oaks. And the first Monday and the third Monday of the month, we feed hungry people, and we give them groceries to take home. and that's at 301 West Avenida de las Flores. You can drop food off there most of the time during the week, and if anybody would like the food to be picked up, I would happy to do it, and I have some helpers, and you can reach me at 805-358-0677, and please really dig into your pockets and your hearts. There are a lot of hungry people in town. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Morrison. Our last speaker is Greg Salzberg.
Sneak back for a minute. As of June, I've been here 40 years.
Hi.
Hello.
Greg Salzberg. I live in Thousand Oaks. I want to discuss, I guess, the child care center. I have a son who's 3 years old that goes there, but I'm not coming to you as a parent of a child there. I'm coming to you as a former educator. I taught high school for 11 years, and just a concerned citizen, because the truth is, if you do what I think we were kind of told last night, it's not going to change my life. I truly am coming to you as a concerned citizen, wanting the best for our city. Okay, so I want that to be understood. I hope that the comments I make will be received as constructive criticism to the situation at the Child Care Center on Conejo School Road. First of all, I applaud the City Council for encouraging the city to work more closely with Conejo Valley Unified School District. I do believe that in the long term this will be a tremendous benefit for our community. I also believe that Neighborhoods for Learning has the best intentions and will do a fantastic job once they learn the new landscape that they are approaching. For example, the infant care thing that was brought up earlier. I know that the NFL teaches that class, but they don't actually implement it, so that'll be something new for them. What I'm wondering is why we're getting rid of an existing business that is flourishing and can be used as a model for NFL to learn by, and simply replacing it with NFL that will eventually be great. I have no doubt about that, but they simply cannot pick up where Roots and Wings left off. It's not possible. And I know that Roots and Wings is supposed to move to another location, but that location is a much smaller and doesn't have infant care available at that area. Okay, so I don't think that the current plan will allow that transition properly. My suggestion is similar to what was said before, that there's a second site, a site for NFL, and leave Roots and Wings there just for a few years. Okay, make a new agreement with Roots and Wings that they will work with the NFL. Okay, to make this transition smooth and to give everybody time to find kind of their niche, as far as give Roots and Wings time to relocate, give NFL time to get its legs, so to speak. And I think it's a win-win, I think, as Brad said earlier. This way, again, we have 2 fantastic child care centers instead of 1. Some of the statements last night that were said were kind of either in the tone of, or it was actually said, we're making change and that's our prerogative. Change because you can shows you have power. Change that's in everybody's best interest, I think, shows that you have wisdom, and I hope that the council will be wise in trying to do what's best for everybody. And I'm sure that you will. The other comment made last night by Mr. Mitnick was that the decision to move forward with NFL was intended to have no negative impacts, and I think he was implying that there would be some. And I think that my suggestion, along with Brad's suggestion of a second site, would lessen those negative impacts even more. And I guess the last thing I say is thank you for your time, and I look forward to helping you in any way that I can, and thank you for listening.
Thank you. And we actually have one additional card, Lisa Jones.
Good evening, Mayor and City Council members. My name is Lisa Jones. I live in Thousand Oaks. I've lived here for 5 years. First off, I want to say thank you for receiving my emails and my comments that I've made over the last probably month or so since the parents of Roots and Wings found out that this possible transition could happen. I think at this point it seems pretty clear what the plan is, and I would just like to go on record and say that I feel that it's a separate, completely distinct program. Neighborhoods for Learning and Roots and Wings are not the same. You're not going to move Neighborhood for Learnings in and have the same children there and the same atmosphere. It's a completely different program. Everything I've seen from the 2 programs are completely distinguishable. As Mr. Salzberg just said, you're not going to have Roots and Wings leave and all of the children and the same atmosphere from that facility stay when Neighborhoods for Learning moves in. And I think if you're planning on doing that, you should be honest with the parents of Roots and Wings and just say, your program is over. We're taking it over and making it a new program. Because they're not in sync at all. They're obviously two wonderful programs that care deeply about children. The philosophies are not the same. The experience is not the same. You've got Neighborhood for Learning who uses 3 hours a day for their care, whereas Roots and Wings is a full-time daycare facility. I have 2 sons that go to 2 different types of program. One who is a preschool, which is generally a 3-hour-a-day program, and Roots and Wings, which is full-time. It's a completely different philosophy. And to ignore that and to tell the parents of Roots and Wings, as was done at the last city council meeting where we attended, and Mr. Mitnick said, "Don't worry about it, everything's fine." That's not the case. Everything's not fine for those of us who have gone to Roots and Wings for years and years. It's not the same program. It's not going to be the same program. I'm not saying that people don't want a smooth transition. It's our children. We don't want them to be traumatized by a big upheaval. But the fact is, you have to recognize these programs aren't going to work succinctly. They're completely different. Whatever the motivation is to take over this program, that's fine. But at least admit to those of us who are at Roots and Wings, this is not going to be your program anymore. You are not going to have the same care that you have. Your program will not be accredited. Your program does not have the staff, because from what I understand, it's a possibility that not all staff is going to stay. Janie has been in the infant room since my nephew was there 5 years ago. She's amazing. And to think that you can just replace her or basically just uproar that whole program and put in this new one, it's just not realistic. Sorry, that's my kid. And I just want that to be made clear to us and to just admit it and say, your program is gone.
Thank you. All right, Mr. Mitnick, would you like to make comments on public comments, please?
Okay, Madam Mayor, members of the council, I'll tackle them as they came up. With respect to the gentleman who spoke about parking on North Reno Road, we appreciate bringing that to our attention. I noticed that the police chief did talk to you for a little while. We will definitely follow up with you, as well as, if it's appropriate and applicable, Mark Watkins will make the Transportation and Traffic Committee aware of this issue. So our Public Works staff appreciates this, as well as our police department, and we'll definitely review it, and we'll be in touch with you, and we'll follow up. Okay, including a phone call tomorrow, right, Mr. Watkins? Absolutely. Okay, thank you. We heard from, if my notes are correct, 4 parents with Roots and Wings, and as the City Council is aware, we did have a parent informational meeting last night, and we were grateful to finally have that opportunity to meet with some of the parents. The issues that you've heard tonight and at the last council meeting, they will be covered at an upcoming agenda item, either in the latter part of November or in December. And the issues are a little bit tricky, and there's some legal concerns and so on. So I have to be careful in what I say here, because the item is not on the agenda, and we explain that to the parents, the timing of the item. And the item has been before council in closed session, and it's been before the school board on 2 occasions. And it'll come back to the council, I mentioned, the lease agreement in the latter part of November or December, as well as going to the school board. The informational meeting last night was an opportunity for city staff for the first time to really look the parents in the eye and explain to them what the proposed changes are at the city-owned child care center right across the road on Caneo School Road. And also was an opportunity to explain the partnership that we have with the school district and what we're trying to achieve in implementing council's direction, actually. Change is always difficult, especially when family routines are impacted. Almost all of us are parents, or several of us have been parents, and we know the pressures and challenges that go along with preschool and infant care. The lease with the current operator does expire in June of 2009, and we are confident that we are working toward providing a long-term continuity of service, long-term rate stability, and long-term affordable child care for the eligible low-income residents who do receive care there. The city does receive a state grant for that, and we provide a significant subsidy from the city, from its redevelopment agency, its general fund, and the state of California. Moving to another location is very challenging because of the demographics and the requirements of the grant. If we move into another area and it's outside the eligibility requirements, we run into problems. And again, these details will be discussed much more so at an upcoming council meeting. The new lease agreement with the school district, as I mentioned the date, Neighborhoods for Learning, they will be hosting an informational meeting on Monday, October 20th at 6 p.m. in the Oakland Park Rooms at City Hall, same place where it was last night, to provide more specific details to their programming, future plans, and background and qualifications of their staff. We do have a world-class public school district, and this program is run through the school district. It's the First Five initiative that was passed in 1998 envisions just this type of relationship. There's a stream of revenue that is provided to help pay for that. I do want to comment that negotiations with the current operator have been going on for quite some time, and they are becoming challenging and difficult, and the fact that parents are encouraged to come down to council meetings and so on, it's making the transition very, very difficult. And that's about all I can say at this time, that we appreciate the parents' understanding and patience during this transitional period, and we do stand committed to minimizing the difficulties with such transition. Thank you. Also, I was asked to comment on one of the comments dealing with council member lifetime health benefits. It is true that council members, once they serve for 5 years, are entitled to lifetime health insurance, or at least bridging the gap until they get to Medicare, and there's some other provisions. But at this point in time, only 3 former council members actually, or their families, take advantage of this benefit. Not all the council members, when they retire, do that. Mrs. Alex Fiore, and this was reported in the paper, Mrs. Alex Fiore, the surviving spouse of Alex Fiore, who was on the council for over 30 years, she does receive some form of health benefits as a result. Judy Lazar, longtime council member, she and or her family are receiving some benefits. And Joey Masry, the wife of the former council and member Ed Masry, she does receive lifetime health care benefits. So those are the only former council members that take that benefit. Many do not take it, and I was asked to clarify that. And that's it for city manager comments. Thank you.
Thank you. Item 7, City and Redevelopment Agency consent calendar. Dr. Glancy.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I move the consent calendar.
Actually, I was going to pull an item. I was seeing if you had a comment.
My apologies.
Okay. I'd like to pull 7F. Would you like to remove?
Sure. I move the balance of the consent calendar.
Okay. Vote, please.
Motion carries 3-0.
Good evening, Mr. Watkins. My question was, this is on the 101 Wendy interchange, and I didn't really see a timeline in there. How long will it be before the work is completed on the interchange?
I don't have that schedule with me right now. The project is currently in design. This particular amendment is to add that design component that will be required by the SDA work on the north side of the freeway. So this adds the northbound on-ramp to this scope of work. The project is currently in design. I think it's around the 50% design mark. I think we've got about another year before the design is complete, and then it goes to bid. So that at that point, about a year's worth of construction.
But do you have a rough estimate of when you think the work's going to be complete?
In that 2-year time range. I don't have a schedule with me tonight, but I know that we're about halfway through design. We'll finish the design, go into the final bid documents, and there's probably about a year before it goes to bid, and then you've probably got about a 1-year construction time.
Okay, I was just looking for an approximate time, because I've had a few people ask me about it. All right, thank you.
I can get back to council with that, be happy to do that.
All right, thank you. I move item 7F. Vote, please.
Motion carries 3-0.
All right, we are going to, we've moved ahead the item 11B, Council on Aging Annual Report, and who is going to present that? All right, very good. Oh, the trio. So we have Harry, Mel, and Jim. Okay. Good evening, Mr. Norkin.
Good evening, Mayor Irwin. Good evening, City Manager, Council members. My name is Harry Norkin, and tonight I have the privilege to bring you the report from the Council on Aging for the 6th time. Tonight will be a bit different. It will be given in 3 parts. With apologies to Charles Dickens, I will represent the spirit of the Commission's past. Mel Silverberg will represent the spirit of the Commission now, and our Jim Searden, our present chair, will represent the spirit of the Commission future. When I was first appointed to the Commission, the body met on the first and third Wednesdays, providing information to various senior issues. I can't read without my glasses. Occasionally, speakers will be invited to present information on senior issues such as health, finance, and affordable housing. We also published a senior services directory that listed the services available to seniors in this area. In addition, the Commission undertook a survey in 2005 to determine senior demographics and needs. During the past year, the Council on Aging presented knowledgeable speakers on subjects of interest to the senior community at every televised meeting. We also distributed supplements to 3,000 seniors through the Nourish America program. The Commission hosted its first dinner with Council on Aging, where 200 senior adults joined dinner and the opportunity to engage in conversation with council members and city elected officials. The Commission also hosted the very popular Senior of the Year dinner and award ceremony. We had the opportunity to interview 5 amazing candidates and chose 2 for the Senior of the Year designation, Bill Bikely and Sally Kutcher. In an effort to improve recognition in the senior community, the Commission formed the Outreach Committee, whose main purpose was to market the services of this Commission. This brought about a change in Commission thinking. We realized old methods of presenting information was not raising awareness. While this is ongoing, the Commission was looking ahead in the next senior survey to be taken in 2007. The planning for this survey and how the results were to be utilized resulted in the Senior Adult Master Plan and Needs Assessment Project. Mel Silverberg, our Spirit of the President and co-chair of the program, will step up to the microphone now and tell us about the SAMP. Mel?
Thank you, Harry. Good evening, Mayor Irwin, council members, and City Manager Mitnick. Tonight I am pleased to present a progress report on the Commission's project to develop a Senior Adult Master Plan and Needs Assessment for the city. In April, we presented a report on SAMP to the City Council. During the past 6 months, we have made notable progress and remain confident that we are on a path to provide the city with a solid foundation for identifying the needs of a growing senior community. We want to highlight a number of SAMP accomplishments. The Council on Aging distributed a total of over 500 comprehensive surveys to the senior community, we attempted to reach a representative senior and baby boomer demography. The survey was available on the city website and through an outreach program at senior venues. A SAMP advisory committee was formed, and its 30 volunteers were empowered to analyze and make recommendations in 6 categories: housing, transportation, health, recreation, assistance, and volunteering. Next month, focus groups expect to complete summary reports containing the building blocks for the SAMP draft report. 2 community meetings are planned for January 2009 to solicit input on the results of our findings. Albert Einstein once said, "Not everything that counts can be counted, and not everything that's counted counts." This speaks to our strategy to not rely solely on survey results, but to utilize available generic research, new economic conditions, and thinking out of the box to enhance conclusions. We plan to submit a final report to the City and City Council in 2009 as the basis for a strategic plan to implement recommendations in 2010. We wish to recognize the dedication and commitment of the SAMP Advisory Committee, names appearing on the screen, and my fellow commissioners, and thank them for their effort on this challenging project. I'd like now those that are present to rise, please. Thank you. Those are the folks that are doing the work. There are a number who are missing who have, they're volunteers, and they do have other things at night that keep them busy. Anyway, I am proud to say that our team ranks with the best volunteers in the country. Thank you very much.
I'm back again. I've been chair during the past 6 years when all the changes took place. Now the time has come for me to pass the gavel, and I'd like to introduce our present chair, Jim Searden, the spirit of the future, to tell you where this commission is going. Jim?
Thank you, Harry. Good evening, Mayor, council members, City Manager Micknick, staff. Well, you've heard where we're going. Oh, you've heard where we've been. You heard where we are, so I'm going to tell you a little about where we're going. Last year was an historically busy year for the council, and this year appears to be even busier. We've set an ambitious agenda for ourselves, starting with our commitment to the completion of the SAMP program. Now, this will involve the efforts of all of the commissioners and all of our distinguished advisory council. We are committed to delivering a report that has substance and can be of real help to the city in planning for our ever-expanding needs in the senior community. One of our other priorities will be the updating of our very, very popular Senior Services Directory. Now, we can't keep these things on the shelves. We've gone through printing after printing after printing of these things, and we still can't keep up. We have recently been asked, when's the new one coming out? When's the new one coming out? It is our goal this year to update it and get it ready. We are looking at the possibility for some potential revenue challenges in terms of getting it printed. So we are going to be investigating, workshopping ways to perhaps generate some revenue for that. The number of, gosh, I think there's like 5,000 of these that are actually printed and in the hands of seniors. But when we go out into the community and we're talking to people, it's amazing how many people have never seen it. So it's a vital, vital document, and kind of a golden kind of an example throughout the county of what a directory ought to look like. So we're very proud of it. One of the things we do intend to try to do this year is to put that updated directory on the website, on the city website. We think that would be a big advantage in reaching more people. Now, the council will also continue its outreach effort. Being out in front of the community, talking on them one-on-one and in small groups, gives us the opportunity to accomplish the other goals we've set for ourselves. For instance, prompting and encouraging the participation in the myriad of senior activities in our area, including more involvement in our Senior of the Year Award. We will be hosting community input events for both seniors and baby boomers, providing vital information for seniors, including the message that the Council on Aging can be their voice in City Hall. Our outreach efforts allow us to do our most important job, the most important work. Not only do we want to provide vital information, but we get a chance to listen. Listen. That is our big job, because when we listen, we find out things that don't necessarily appear on surveys, that don't necessarily appear in the paper. So our outreach effort is an ongoing, continuing effort. So we are, those are basically our goals. They seem ambitious, but I am confident that we have the people in place that have the skill, the drive, and the willingness to deliver a good product. I'd like to take a quick second to give my personal thanks to Francine Spriegel, my hero, our heart and soul, the engine that drives us. I have a tendency to refer to her as, to me, she's Xena, the Princess Warrior. So now I did have one revenue producing idea. I thought maybe we could raffle off a whole day of work of Francine Spriegel to busy executives around the world. I think that ought to bring in some pretty brisk bidding. I scrapped the idea because we can't do without her for a whole day. So now we're stuck with maybe setting up a kissing booth out in front of the Count Cavalli here. So Mel and Harry and I we figure that's where the big bucks are. In behalf of the Commission, I wish to thank all of you for the support that you've given us, and I would like to, one more time, give a special shout out to this incredible group of volunteers in our advisory council. They are a shining example of what community involvement can produce and accomplish. They are a shining example that we are a caring community. They are the best example that we're still a wonderful, ideal place to live, work, and play. Thank you.
Couldn't say it any better than that. Thank you again. Your group is really extraordinary, your group of volunteers, and we're looking forward to getting more information from you in the future and continue your outreach efforts to reach those that are unaware of what you're doing. Excuse me. Thank you. And department reports now. We are on item 9A, and this is very timely, obviously, given all the news in the paper. An update on city investments, and City Manager Mitnick will give the introductory remarks.
Madam Mayor, members of the council, thank you. I will start out with some, as the Mayor said, introductory comments, and then we'll have John Short, the chair of the Investment Review Committee, make some comments, and then Candy Hong and her staff will give an in-depth report on the city's investments. We chose tonight very deliberately, because of the turmoil in the credit and financial markets. So and we have been keeping the council updated on a regular basis, but we thought we'd take advantage of the opportunity to put on a council agenda to make the public aware as well. And at this time, what I would like to do is point out that what you're going to hear tonight is just one slice of the pie that the finance department is responsible for in terms of managing the city's finances and assets. And if you think about it, it is an awesome responsibility. because it's not just the municipal corporation's assets, it's the community's assets, and the city is an ongoing concern. We can't do like a lot of the companies on Wall Street, and when the going gets tough, just file for bankruptcy and close shop and move on. Yeah, and go to a retreat and then go join another firm. We're here for the long haul. So we have to be sound in how we manage the city's resources. The finance department's in charge of managing a $220 million operating budget, all funds. The accounting for the organization, the internal audit, facilities and assets. We have over $1 billion in assets that the taxpayers have paid for and count on that we manage and maintain. And they're also in charge of the information technology aspect. And I mentioned facilities. There's all kinds of things that they're responsible for in terms of a golf course, equestrian center, etc. So tonight you're going to hear just about the investment pie. The city's financial position, as you will hear, is indeed strong. We are in a very enviable position. Throughout California, cities are facing unbelievable challenges. You read and hear about layoffs, work furloughs, cutbacks, program cuts, etc. We're not in that position. And we're not in that position really for a few reasons. One, very strong financial leadership by this city council. You're a stable council, you're focused, you're very conservative, you do an outstanding job managing the people's money and assets, you have clear goals and objectives, you have a number of policies in this area. You have separate financial policies, investment policies, which are delineated in the report you'll hear about tonight. You have accounting policies, capital improvement policies, reserve policies, the list goes on. These policies are available for the public to review. Some of us who have a finance background get very excited at times like this because it's a chance to show off what we do well. And I encourage you to look at those policies to understand the guidelines that the employees and the council use to manage the day-to-day operations. We're very proud of the financial strategic plan. And council, you know that at the next meeting we're going to give you an update. And that plan has been going on since 2002. It's a long-term outlook, and we're updating it. We've had in front of this council over the past year an expert on demographics, explaining what's going on with the aging of the community. We've had an expert on sales tax. We hired two local economists, one out of UC Santa Barbara and one out of Cal Lutheran, and they did a comprehensive analysis of the economy, the local economy, and they presented that to council. We also had a sales tax expert come in and tell you what's going on with our sales tax situation, and we had a separate session on the capital improvement program. So this is just an extension of doing all that. The council's been very good about ensuring that we live within our means. We do not spend more than we take in. I'll repeat that. We do not spend more than we take in. The council's committed to avoiding the entrapments that many other local governments have fallen into in the last few years, and that is the enhanced retirements. I'm proud to report that the council's held the line on that. We have the 2% at 55, which is among the lowest in California. We do compensate well, but on the retirement side, no enhanced retirements. It's just simply too costly. When you hear about cities laying people off or cutting back services, one of the culprits usually is the enhanced retirements. So the council's done that. The council's avoided growing the bureaucracy, adding programs and positions without offsetting cuts somewhere else. You have been very strong in the area of public safety and added police officers here and there. Most recently, the converting from the DARE program to the school resource officer program with one school resource police officer at each high school and a separate internet predator detective that was added. So again, you've held the line on new positions and programs. You have a capital facilities committee with 2 council members. They do a great job in providing a sounding board for staff to make sure we're adhering to the overall council direction and goals in terms of capital improvements. Our infrastructure is in outstanding condition in the city. I'll repeat that. Our infrastructure is in good condition, and it'll stay in good condition. No matter what happens to the local economy, we have sufficient reserves, and even with the declining sales tax revenues and the anticipated hits we expect on the property tax side, we're still able to provide high levels of service. We also look at cutting back on vacant positions. So when a vacancy appears, we take a look at can we freeze it or eliminate it. We have citizen committees. You're going to hear from the Investment Review Committee. We appreciate the work of these type of committees. They serve as the ultimate check and balance to make sure that we're being receptive or paying attention to what the community wants as well as what the council is directing us to do. The last one I want to talk about is incredible staff. I'm very proud of our overall, all all the department heads, but our finance director, Candy Hong, the assistant finance director, John Adams, Paul Farr, who's our investment guru. You should be thanking him more than anybody for the great position that we're in. And when the markets were going down, I went down to the second floor to thank Paul personally for the position that we're in. And Paul, we don't do that enough, and I'm going to take advantage that you're captive here to say thank you. Jane Alderman, and she's here, and Catherine Haywood running our accounting operation, Brent Cicada, who does the budget. These are people you don't see a lot of. You see a lot of Candy because she's the spokesperson for the department, but these other individuals are top-notch, and they do a great job keeping us afloat. I like to say that the way we run the finances here is slow and steady, and slow and steady wins the race. So while there are a lot of hares trying to do strange things, we're the tortoise that just keeps going along. And this is where your city excels, and I'm real proud of everybody. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to John Short, the chair of the Investment Review Committee.
Good evening, Madam Mayor, City Council members, staff. My name is John Short, and I am the chair of the Investment Review Committee. In 1997, the City Council created the Investment Review Committee, IRC, with the sole purpose to act as an advisory capacity to the City Council. There are 5 members that are appointed by the Council to the IRC. The current members include Terry Oberman, Cody Sorensen, Mike Dahlia, Richard Law, and myself. The 5-member team has an impressive 52 years combined experience in the financial services industry, 35 years in the certified public accounting industry, and over 20 years of corporate management experience. This diverse group of individuals is dedicated and focused on the goals and expectations of the Finance Department of the City of Thousand Oaks, and understands the investment policy statement by which the city's assets are invested. Each quarter, the IRC meets with staff to review the city's current cash and investment positions. In these meetings, members ask challenging questions, often complex to staff. The responses are always direct, thorough, professional, and most importantly, without reservation. I have been in the financial advisory role with a major investment firm for over 22 years and have experienced many difficult and challenging events that have affected the investment markets, including Black Monday, October 19, 1987, the technology bust of the early 90s, the terrorist attacks in the World Trade Centers, and many others. None as difficult as what we are currently experiencing. The worst week in the stock market in over 75 years, an $800 billion stimulus package passed by government, a global bank rate cut of 0.5%, a 1,000-point intraday swing in the Dow Jones Industrial Average, and all these events happened just last week. The U.S. equity markets are down over 40% in the past 12 months. Oil prices plummeted from an intraday high set on July 11th of $148 a barrel to close on Friday of just over $77, a drop of over 48% in just 3 short months. The financial markets have seen a flight to safety in the U.S. Treasury bonds like never before, thus driving interest rates to new lows. Although the overall financial markets are going through unprecedented times, the investment portfolio of the City of Thousand Oaks is sound. The investment policy statement reads as follows. It is a policy of the City of Thousand Oaks to invest public funds in a manner which will provide the highest investment return with the maximum security while meeting the daily cash flow demands of the city and complying with state law and investment policies governing the investment of public funds. The main objective of the Investment Review Committee when meeting with staff is to make sure that 3 main objectives are met, which include the investment with regards to safety, liquidity, and yield. As the chair, I am here this evening to let council and staff, as well as the citizens of our great community, know that the Finance Department has done an outstanding job in protecting and preserving the assets of this great community while maintaining an above-average rate of return. At this time, I'd like to turn the rest of this evening's presentation over to the Finance Department Director, Candace Hong.
Thank you, John. I wanted to also recognize the team on the Investment Review Committee and point them out because they have spent a significant amount of time helping us out and looking at our investments. And so I wanted to recognize John Short, who has over 20 years in the as a financial advisor. And Terry Oberman is not here tonight, but he's a CPA and has had over 12 years of service here with the Investment Review Committee. Cody Sorensen, who was appointed in July 2005, and he has over 20 years in financial services. Michael Dahlia, who's also a financial advisor, and he was appointed in July of 2006. And finally, Richard Law, who's a director and manager of major corporations for over 20 years, and he was appointed in September 2007. So you can see we have a very qualified group that is working with us. So I want to thank them for their service. The City Council is vested with authority to invest the city funds pursuant to California Government Code, and the municipal code provides for the city manager to appoint the city treasurer and subject to confirmation by the City Council. The principal activities of the city treasurer include the receipt and custody of funds, the deposit of funds, investment of funds, and the disbursement of funds. The delegation of authority is for a one-year period and must be reauthorized annually. The City Council most recently approved the delegation by adopting a resolution in February of this year. Included in the resolution is the annual approval of the city's investment policy as required by the Government Code. And the city's investment policy is attached to this memorandum in Exhibit A, and the resolution is also in that attachment. The procedure for the investment of city funds is specified in the investment policy. The provisions of the policy comply with Government Code, which lists the types of investments permitted by the code and the limits on the amount of a particular investment the city may hold. As John Short mentioned, we have a mission statement. Primarily, we want to point out that the investment policy states that safety, liquidity, and yield are in that order. Safety is a preservation of principle, and investment activities are to be undertaken in such a manner that we seek to avoid losses of principal. Liquidity is a requirement that the portfolio is staggered so the city meets all the financial obligations when they're presented, and that sufficient liquidity is also available to meet unanticipated expenses. Yield is the objective to obtain a market rate of return. The benchmark investment yield is the average quarterly yield of the three-month Treasury bill. This schedule here that we've got in the presentation shows the authorized investments that are authorized under the investment policy. Everything on the left side of the screen of that slide are ones that we are currently invested in, and the ones on the right are ones we have invested sometimes in the past but don't currently have investments. All of them have certain limitations in the length that we can be invested in. The maximum of many of these is 5 years, but some are as short as 180 days. Actually, the repurchase agreements are actually 30 days, which we have never done. But the policy not only identifies the length of time that we can invest in, but the percentage of the portfolio that we can have in that certain investment, and a quality rating that they are required to have as well. And John Adams will get into that a little bit more later. We have a number of ineligible investments that are clearly stated in the Government Code. Primarily, that's investing in stocks, financial futures, and options. Those aren't allowed. We want to talk a little bit about investment oversight. Scott mentioned the staff that are involved in the Finance Department. Paul Farr, who is working very diligently every day with the Bloomberg software that actually identifies all of the potential investments we have out there and what's available, and looking for the best price. He and Jane Adelman, who's in the audience, work day to day on this to keep on top of what the current investment portfolio looks like and what our investments are allowed, and they are very good at this, as was mentioned by Scott. And John Adams and I meet regularly with the two of them to go over our investment strategy, and then again we meet with the Investment Review Committee quarterly to go over how our investments are going. Each quarter as well, the investment report is sent up to the city manager's office, and they quarterly do random audits of the investments by a staff person in the city manager's office. And then annually, there's an independent external auditor review of our internal controls in the investment function, and also looking at compliance with the investment policy. So with that, I'm going to turn this over to John Adams to talk about the Treasury function.
Good Good evening, City Council. This evening, I'm just going to briefly talk about the major day-to-day functions of the Treasury Division. I have up right now the 4 main functions I'll talk a little about. One is analysis, cash flow analysis. The second is our investment strategy and selection process. Number 3 is monitoring, both for investments and monitoring our investments, investment agreements, and also the financial markets. And the 4th is reporting, which really covers investment performance and reporting. Let me first start off by covering cash flow. Cash flow is really broken out into 3 areas, each serving a specific purpose in managing the city's investment portfolio. On a daily basis, Treasury staff provides the treasurer with a short-term cash flow report that covers the next 60 days of the city's cash and investment needs. This includes all major inflows and outflows. The summary of the report is located on page 49 of the packet or as Exhibit D. On an annual basis, as part of the budget process, we review the current yield and cash balances to determine what the city can expect in revenue and interest earnings. Part of that analysis is to review the proposed operating and capital budgets to determine when the city can expect major inflows and outflows that will impact the investment balances. We often refer to this as the average daily cash balances in calculating our interest earnings. As part of the daily cash analysis and the budget forecasting, we ultimately prepare a long-term cash flow analysis. Since we do purchase investments that go beyond a single year, roughly 2 to 3 years, depending on the treasury or the certificate of deposit. With an investment portfolio of approximately $250 million, we can have at any one time 80 to 100 different investments. With an annual operating budget of over $200 million, on a weekly basis, we have inflows that range from anywhere from $4 to $6 million. As Candace mentioned earlier, currently our investment selection and strategy are of these 5 major items. I just want to take a brief note on mutual funds, and I'll go over them each individually. Mutual funds, and I want to make this clarification, mutual funds that we invest in need to be within the permitted investments. So these are mutual funds that simply deal with usually federal agencies and or U.S. Treasury. So the mutual fund in themselves is diversified upon these programs, but do not go outside of our permitted investments. The second one listed is Local Agency Investment Fund. This we often refer to as LAIF. LAIF is managed by the state treasurer, and it's for the benefit of local agencies. I would say that probably all cities in the state of California participate with LAIF, or a large percentage. This is just one investment option for municipalities in the state of California. The third one listed public fund CDs. We participate in a program run by the state that is for certificates of deposit. These are unique because we usually buy them in increments of $2 million, and if you're familiar with FDIC insurance, they insure up to $100,000. The state, because of the government code, runs a program in which these CDs are collateralized, I think 105%. So in theory, they're not insured by FDIC. There's separate collateral that's maintained by a department of the state that monitors the program. Federal agencies, this is any instrument that's backed by the federal government. If you look, I think we have home loan bank securities, and so they're fully backed by the federal government. And then we have U.S. Treasury bills, notes, and bonds. This is another, about a third of our portfolios in U.S. Treasuries. Next slide, this is actually a summary of our current portfolio operating fund for August 31st of 2008. In the same order, as you can see, mutual funds is really our day-to-day, what we have for day-to-day cash flow needs, our liquidity. LAIF also has a very short term, only days of maturity, it is 1 day, so we can withdraw funds. But the uniqueness part of LAIF is there's a maximum of $80 million that the city can invest. So right now we're about $70 million. I talked about public fund CDs. We have about 69 or about 28% in that area. U.S. Treasuries and federal agencies make up of over $105 million. Just want to make a note. In the staff report, we did provide a 5-year average balance for the city. Since fiscal year ending 2003, the cash and investment balance was $218 million. Based on this report, or at least as of August, the balance was $248 million. This reflects a 14% growth in our cash and investments. This is more or less reserve funds that have been built up over the 5-year period. This is a direct result of strong financial leadership by the City Council and sound fiscal policies that have been implemented by city management. Next slide is our bond fund portfolio. It's only $23 million as shown here. The investments in the bond fund relate to either bond project funds or bond reserve funds, all of which are managed by our fiscal agent at the direction of the city treasurer. We have $300,000 in mutual funds, about $5 million in LAIF, and $18 million in investment agreements. Of the $23 million, $6 million is in reserve funds and $17 million is in project funds. Just want to briefly note, relate to monitoring. On a daily basis, Treasury staff is monitoring the financial markets. As Candace mentioned earlier, we use multiple sources of information monitoring our investments. Also, as part of the monitoring of investments is to ensure compliance with our various investment agreements. I showed you on the prior slide that we have about $18 million in investment agreements. That is part of the other aspect of monitoring what companies are doing, which Paul will talk about later. So this is a significant portion of time that Treasury staff spends is simply on monitoring our investments and what the financial markets are doing. Investment performance and reporting. Really wanted, and Candace briefly talked about it earlier, we do daily Treasury reports. We do a monthly investment report that's prepared per the policy and presented to City Council. And then we do quarterly investment review committee reports where we meet with the IRC, go over our investments, and ensure compliance with the policy. As far as performance, I want to provide this, this 6-quarter chart that shows the yields for the past 6 quarters since January of 2007 for 3 different categories. The first one is the City of Thousand Oaks investment portfolio. This is the average rate of return over the last 6 quarters, or average rate per quarter for the last 6 quarters. The second column is the state treasurer's pool, or LAIF as we refer to it. Certainly you've seen the earlier quarters, the return was a lot higher, but as you can see, the return is less than we're currently earning. And then of course our benchmark, which is a 3-month treasury. Again, in 2007 there was an inverted yield curve in which the 3-month treasury was outperforming our portfolio, but is far below our portfolio return as of June 30th, 2008. Simple graph, just to show you how they measure up. Certainly, at the first quarter of 2007, our portfolio was lower, but as you can see, steadily the decline has been, or the increase was steady, and the decline is as steady compared to both the benchmark and LAIF. This provides a 5-year annual performance. Certainly back in 2004, our portfolio was outperforming both LAIF and the benchmark. There was a point in 2006 that those passed, and then now we're now outperforming them per the most recent fiscal year. This presentation was really designed to provide the City Council an update on the city's investments that are measured or that are managed by the city treasurer. There are other investments that will be impacted during the current financial crisis. These are investments that are considered off the balance sheet but have budgetary impacts. What I mean by off the balance sheet, they're not cash investments that are shown in our financial report. And it's very clear in the policy, if you look at the items that are managed by the treasurer, those that are on our balance sheet per the CAFR. And I'll just talk about the 3 briefly. I've listed the 3. The first one, which is the city's retirement plan with CalPERS. Our current assets that the CalPERS manage is approximately $125 million. CalPERS has a different investment policy and has a very different strategy than the city. You will see in the next slide that in past years they've earned as much as 19% in return, and in the most current year they had a negative 3%, which means that they had a reduction in their portfolio. The second one is OPEB, or other post-employment benefits. This is how the city is going to decide, or has decided, to fund retiree health benefits for the employees. Currently, CalPERS manages over $6 million in funds for the city. And the final is our part-time defined benefit plan, which has about $1 million in assets. This one is a little different. This is actually at the direction, the investment options are at the direction of the city, but we do not manage those funds directly. Okay. Going back to CalPERS, again, off the balance sheet, but have budgetary impacts. And what I mean by budgetary impacts, if over time, this will affect the rates that we contribute for retirement for our employees. This chart is to show that how CalPERS has performed over the past 10 years. In 1998, CalPERS was managing $160 billion. Based on the most recent financial statements, as of June 30th, 2008, the value of their portfolio is $239 billion. And if you look at it, that is the red line. The red line starts out at 99, where they're managing 160, and at the end of 2008, they're managing over $239 billion. CalPERS is the second largest retirement system, and the first being, of course, the federal government. In fiscal year ending in 2007, CalPERS had an annual rate of return of 19.1%. This is in comparison to 2008, where their return was a negative 2.62%. This decline in the portfolio is reflected in the red line. If you look, certainly in 2007, at the highest point in their portfolio, there is a small decrease from, I think it's 243 down to 239, and that's the decrease of the interest earnings that you see, a sharp decrease from 19% down to a negative 2.6%. At this point, I'm going to turn it over to Paul Farr, who will talk about the impacts that the markets have had on our investments.
Thank you, John. Members of the City Council, during the last 8 months, the staff has been updating the city manager and the city council on the effects of the subprime mortgage crisis, which has now morphed into a full-blown credit crisis, which is affecting the entire world's economies. The last update that we provided to the city manager was on September 30th, and we're going to speak to some events that have happened in the last 2 weeks. The city has a number of relationships with banks relating to the operating portfolio investments and the bond portfolio investments. And we can report that we have been able to preserve all principal, and we've had to deal with certain situations which required us to reinvest funds at a lower interest rate in a much safer investment. As we have mentioned before in this presentation, our objectives are safety, liquidity, and yield, and now we're more than ever focused on the safety and liquidity part of it. The next slide shows the 4 areas in which the city has been impacted by the financial crisis. The first is in the bond portfolio. The city is an occasional issuer of municipal bonds. We use bond insurance to reduce the interest cost on the bonds. At one time, a year ago, there were 9 or 10 municipal bond insurance companies that had a AAA rating and were eligible to be used by cities like Thousand Oaks to provide bond insurance. All of the city's bonds are structured with level debt service, meaning that the annual principal and interest costs are fixed and do not fluctuate. We have done business with one municipal bond insurance company, which we will discuss in detail in a minute, that lost its AAA rating, and that translated into a AA rating on those bonds that have been insured by that company. However, this downgrade by the bond insurance company had no effect on the city's budget in terms of providing the annual principal and interest payments. The second area is in the investment of bond proceeds. Typically, when bonds are issued, there are two types of funds which are invested. The first type is the project fund. The project fund is set aside for the use on the capital improvement for which the bonds are issued. Example of this is 2002, the city issued bonds for the expansion of the city library, and about $7 million was set aside in such a fund. The second type of bond proceeds that are invested are reserve funds. Typically, reserve funds are set aside in the amount of 1 year of annual debt service, and this provides security to the bondholders who know that there's some protection if for some reason the city is unable to make the scheduled principal and interest payments. Both types of bond proceeds are held by a fiscal agent or a bond trustee. The investment is directed by the finance director treasurer, and in most cases the funds are invested in an investment agreement that's obtained through a bidding process through what was once the major banks and Wall Street investment firms. The third area where we have been affected is in reserve fund agreements. As an alternative to providing bond proceeds in cash to fund the reserve fund, the city is able to enter into an agreement with a bank or insurance company that would have to be rated at least a AA or a AAA rated level, and in exchange for a premium, the bank agrees to provide cash payments to the bond trustee or fiscal agent if the city is unable to make the necessary or required payments. The fourth area has to do with the operating investment. As John had mentioned, we have substantial funds invested in public fund certificates of deposit. We have 4 eligible financial institutions that we have been depositing certificates of deposit. These 4 institutions have to be in compliance and participate in the state's local agency security program, which is administered by the State Department of Financial Institutions. The certificates of deposit, the money that we place with the institution, is collateralized by a equal amount of Treasury securities that are held by a third-party collateral agent. It's commonly called the agent of depository. And if for some reason the institution that's holding our certificate of deposit is unable to return the funds at maturity, the state would direct that the collateral agent would liquidate the securities and the city would receive its money. And now we will discuss each of 6 situations that we've been following very closely for the past 8+ months. The first company is Financial Security Assurance, FSA as it's commonly called. It's an insurance company whose line of business is providing bond insurance and surety bonds for surety policies for reserve funds. It's a AAA rated company. It's one of only 2 AAA rated bond insurance companies that remain, and it has provided bond insurance for 2 of our issues, the 1998 wastewater financing, and the 2003 refinancing of the Lang Ranch Community Facilities District Special Tax Bonds. FSA has also provided a reserve agreement for the Lang Ranch Bonds Reserve Fund. As I mentioned, FSA has retained its AAA rating. However, we have noted within the last 2 weeks that its parent company, who is based in Europe, Dexia SA, was recently taken over by the governments of Belgium and France. While this is what I'd like to say is that this is one of the first banks that was taken over in this manner, but now it's become very prevalent on both sides of the Atlantic. All we can say further is that we'll monitor the financial aspects of SSA and take action in the future as appropriate. The next slide is on American International Group, known as AIG. AIG is a huge insurance company and has been in the news of late. The AIG provided a reserve fund investment agreement for the 1998 wastewater financing. In essence, we entered into agreement with AIG for the $1.5 million reserve fund, and in exchange, AIG paid us a rate of interest, which I believe was about 4.8%. As part of the agreement, AIG is required to maintain a AA rating, and when they were downgraded recently, the agreement provided that certain downgrade provisions be implemented, and AIG elected to return the cash to the bond trustee, so we suffered no principal loss, and the bond trustee has, at our direction, temporarily invested it in a Treasury money market fund. There is a reduction in yield, and we will eventually seek out and determine a more appropriate investment for that, assuming that we can maintain our objectives of safety and liquidity. The next slide is on Citigroup. Citigroup provided us an investment agreement for the 2005 Thousand Oaks Boulevard Redevelopment Agency tax allocation bonds. The project fund is holding about $13 million, which is held in the agreement. At the present time, the Citigroup is maintaining its bond rating of AA-, and we will continue to monitor that on a regular basis. If Citigroup was downgraded to below AA- or into the A category, it would trigger certain downgrade provisions, which would include returning the cash to the trustee in the same manner that AIG did with the other transaction. The next slide is on AMBAC. It's also known as the AMBAC Municipal Bond Insurance Corporation. AMBAC provided AMBAC has provided bond insurance and reserve fund surety agreements. AMBAC was downgraded on June 5th, 2008 from a AAA rating to a AA rating. This triggered a downgrade provision in the agreement, and the bond issue in question was the city's 2002 certificates of participation for the library expansion. On July 22nd, the staff recommended and the City Council approved the transfer of $1.2 million representing the reserve requirement to the bond trustee. These funds are invested at the city's direction in the State Local Agency Investment Fund. There is a reduction in investment earnings because prior to the transfer, the $1.2 million was part of the operating portfolio, and now it's invested in the local agency investment fund. And at the present time, we're showing a better yield than the LAIF fund, and so there is a reduction in investment earnings. Again, it's in our judgment, the safety and liquidity is more important than trying to find equivalent or additional yield in this environment. Next slide is on Lehman Brothers. Lehman Brothers provided a reserve fund agreement for the Lang Ranch Community Facilities District Special Tax Bonds. We've actually had this agreement for 12 years. Lehman deposits securities with the bond trustee, and it would be used in the event where the city, through the district, was unable to make the required principal and interest payments on the bonds. Lehman has gone bankrupt, and certain parts of it have been acquired by Barclays Bank. The securities matured on October 1st, and the trustee is holding cash in the amount of $325,000, which represents the proceeds of those securities. And we've instructed the trustee to hold on to those funds until we can ascertain who is going to succeed to Lehman with respect to that agreement. And that's something else we are monitoring on a regular basis and keeping in touch with the bond trustee to make sure we can make timely decisions if those are required. The sixth firm where we've had to monitor is in the operating portfolio. This is Washington Mutual Bank, WAMU. It was and is an eligible institution for public fund certificates of deposit, and we've been watching it closely. A good gauge is watching their stock price slide below $2. And fortunately, fortunately for us, not for their stockholders, but Washington Mutual is purchased by J.P. Morgan Chase, which is a bank, and with the assistance of the FDIC. At the present time, Washington Mutual has indicated to us that the $14 million in public funds certificates of deposit are in place and will remain in place with their original term and interest rate. As you might guess, we are not placing any more public funds CDs with them, and we'll wait and see what happens in the future. That ends my portion of the report, and I'm sure I'll be able to answer questions.
We're ending the presentation. The recommendation was receive and file a report, but we're open for any questions that council might have.
I had a few questions, actually. The first is in the report on page 6, you have the operating fund portfolio at $248 million, and in the agenda you have it at $240 million. So does that mean between the
for clarification, and let me, on page 3, or at least page 3 of the staff report, I think it's page 3 on mine. There's two tables. Table 1 reflects the $248 or $249 million. That's the par value of the portfolio as of August 31st, 2008. That's what we showed in the slide. Table 2 is what we would consider, if you look to the left, it says average daily cash balance. And this was important to show you that if we took the 12-month average on our portfolio, that at one point, on one side, the portfolio might have been $231 million, and at the other end, it was $249. The average was $240 million. And that's how we calculate the interest earnings and the annual rate of return. I hope that clarified it, that 240 was the average balance over the 12-month period.
The average balance per day.
The average daily balance over the entire year. It takes every single day and it averages it together.
But basically, if you look at the trend here, over the last 4 years, we've increased our reserves $31 million. Is that
yes,
correct?
The portfolio, and as I noted on when I came to that one slide, the portfolio has grown from, at the end of June of 2003, it has grown from 218 up to, based on the August 31st, $248 million. So 30 million, it was 14%.
But
so yes, it has grown.
From 2004, it's grown 31 million.
Correct.
So that, it is very impressive. I can't imagine that there are very many cities that would be having this presentation right now, and it's amazing the way the staff has navigated through this minefield, that you can still have these types of numbers and growing reserves.
Yeah, and just for comparison purposes, if I go back and look at the adopted general fund revenue budget in 2003-2004, 59.7 million. And based on the 07-08, it's grown to $73.3 million. And so you see not just the growth in the investment portfolio, but also in our operating budgets. And that's over the 5-year period. And so those reserves have been built up based on prudence by the City Council.
Expertise on the part of the city staff, I would say. What is with LAIF? There's 70 million, and then there's an additional 5 million invested in the bond portfolio. Is it the total can't exceed 80 million?
No. Bond portfolios. The bond portfolio is separate, and each of them, each bond could have its own deposit in LAIF. And so those are on their own, but the operating specifically for the city is the $80 million. Hopefully I answered that correctly.
And the $80 million comes about because we're allowed to have one for the general fund and then general operations and one for the redevelopment agency, so they're each $40 million max.
Correct. Total of 80.
So like how we get the total of 80.
And what is the investment risk with LAIF? Or is that considered one of your safest investments, or are the Treasury notes the safest?
Treasury securities are the safest because you have the full faith and credit of the United States government, and we've, in the last week or so, have come to know what that really means. And with LAIF, they have a diversified portfolio. They do invest in areas that we do not, but they're part of the what's called the pooled money investment account, which is part of the state's pool, and there's, I believe it's in excess of $60 billion. They have a full-time staff of treasury managers, and if you think we're conservative, they're even more conservative than we are, and we meet with them periodically at conferences, and in fact their annual conference is next week, which I'll be attending. And it's like a money market fund. It's very short term. We can get our money out on 1 day's notice, and it's a diversified portfolio. And it's probably second or third as secure as any of our other investments in theory, but in practice, the city's money is very safe there. And I might just make one other comment. Depending on how other investments are, there are times when Treasury securities have a better yield than LAIF, and we'll draw down LAIF to next to nothing, and we'll be in Treasury securities at a much higher level than we are now. LAIF is nice because of that 1 day liquidity feature that we use it for cash flow. We move money back and forth as necessary to keep as little as possible in our checking account, but have enough to pay our bills every week. So.
Did you want to make a comment?
Madam Mayor, members of the council, I would like to make a comment here, because this is where Paul is earning his money and is proving his value to the city and to the community. At a time a few years ago, Paul could have chased higher yields by going into corporate notes or agency paper, that type of thing, but he was the tortoise, and slow and steady was high on treasuries, and today, if you look at the returns, we're reaping the rewards of that very focused approach. So thank you for that.
I think that answers most of my questions, but I just have to say, since I've started here 4 years ago, I've been so impressed with the finance department and the work you guys do, Ms. Edelman and Mr. Adams and Candace Hong. And I know that really the person that's been guiding us through this real crisis is Paul Farr, and Mr. Mitnick made the comment that you're like our Alan Greenspan, and you are looking like quite the hero right now. But I also want to say we have a lot of safety features. I would put it that way, safety features. The Investment Review Committee, these guys are all experts in their fields. We've got, Mr. Glancy and I interviewed the last group, and just really smart people that are willing to volunteer their time and make sure that the city stays on track. And of course, just so the residents know, we have internal auditors, we have external auditors, we have a second auditing group, and a council committee that's going to be starting to look at investments too. So we are really doing a very good job here at the city. And of course, I really think the leadership of Mr. Mitnick, who is from the finance field, that's really, like I said, has helped us avoid a lot of minefields, and I hope you keep going in this direction. I don't know how much more bad news the rest of the world can take, but let's make sure that Thousand Oaks keeps looking good. Mr. Glancy?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I think a question for Mr. Farr, probably. When AMBAG lost its Lot 3A rating, necessitating a $1.2 million muster of funds by the city, is there any other surety provider that is apt to cause a like response on our part?
Back in February, we put together a chart, to help us understand where our risks might be. And at that time, and still, we had 5 bond issues that had bond insurance, and 3 were with AMBAC and 2 were with FSA. We talked about FSA. It's still a qualified AAA rated insurer. Next week or month it may not be, but we had to take an action to comply with the trust agreement on the bonds, that the trustee needed either a qualified reserve agreement on the $1.2 million, or the city would have to put up cash. And of course, our obligation, first, foremost, and always when we're dealing with our bond issues, is that takes the priority. And so that's why we recommended back in July that the council take the action. Even though it resulted in a slightly lower interest earnings, we had that obligation under our indenture bond agreements.
Thank you very much for that answer. It's very reassuring, as the mayor pointed out, that our finance department is very much on top of things, which is no mean feat in today's climate. Unfortunately, I think it makes us a bit of a target from Sacramento, but y'all do a really good job, and this is a very thorough and a very good report. Thank you very much.
Ms. Bilden-Lapena?
Thank you. Good evening. Thank you very much for this very detailed presentation. I appreciate it. I was glad to hear that most, if not all, of our principles have remained untouched. But I was wondering, as I was reading through the report, I was looking for information that perhaps you could provide tonight. Do you know how much the city has lost on paper based on today's values?
I guess the short answer is that we're a buy and hold investor, and the prices of securities may fluctuate up and down over the life of the maturity, but we are objective and we manage the liquidity to the point that we don't have to sell securities before they mature. So in addition to that, I guess we get into the longer answer. On page 55 of the agenda packet, we provided the August 31st investment report. And I'll just say this, and then we can, if we want to get into the details later. In the first section there on it, it lists all the investments, and it summarizes the par value, or that's the value of the security when we purchased it. So if it was a treasury note, it was $2 million, and that's the par value. If you look over in the next column, you can see that we have an unrealized gain because the market value of that basket of securities is now $250 million. We could theoretically sell those higher yielding securities and take a short-term profit, which if we were traders, we would probably do that. But it can go the other way too. If when the economy turns around and interest rates start to rise, you're going to see unrealized losses in that market value column. And that's what we have to deal with because we're buy and hold investors. And we're not going to take a loss. It's always unrealized.
That sounds like a Fed chair answer. Thank you.
Well, maybe just add to that, at the end of each fiscal year, our auditors go back and look at whether or not there's unrealized loss or gain and actually ask us to book that too. So it's disclosed in our financial statements every year. So you kind of know what the status of that is, at least annually.
Do we know the difference between our balance sheet valuations and market valuations of all of our investments?
Well, that's what this report shows here. It shows what we bought them at and then what the current value is, and you get those reports monthly, so the council can review those every month.
But we don't have one for the past 12 months, just one thing, one table, one chart that would...
You can actually get that in our annual report when you get that, when we publish our annual financial report, and you'll be getting that in November, December, probably okay. December. You'll actually have a... You'll actually see that.
And that will then show us, if anything, what, if anything, the city may have lost on paper? Mm-hmm. And right now, we don't know that.
Well, we know that, but it would show what happened as of June 30th. Okay? You want to add to that? Paul wants to add.
One additional piece of information. On the August 31st report that I mentioned that's on page 55 of the agenda packet, if you flip over to the next page, it's a detailed listing of each of the individual securities that the city owns, and there's also the same columns that show what the par value is and what the market value is. And these, Jane Edelman puts this together. We have a pricing service that we subscribe to that provides market values, and so you can see if there are changes on a month-to-month basis. And on June 30th, I'll let the accountants talk about their requirements, but it is disclosed, and we do know the numbers. So,
if I can interject here, the simple answer is we don't have a negative. We're not upside down. And every month, the monthly financial, the monthly investment reports are shared with the council. And Mr. Farr is pointing to on page 55, it clearly delineates the par value is, what the market value and what the book value are. So it's not like your 401 statements, which show, for most people, are dropping. Because we hold these type of investments, we get a guaranteed interest rate, and the monies do flow in. So we do not have negative values. Overall, we have a positive value. It's really that simple. Thank you.
I'll look forward to the report then at the end of the year. Thank you.
All right, do we have a receiving? Dr. Glancy?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I recommend that we receive and file the report, and again, congratulations on being so thorough and informative. Confusing too.
I'm being so confusing? Well, and again, I have to say once more, thank you to all of you and the Investment Review Committee too. Just outstanding news tonight. Thank you. Vote, please.
Motion carries 3-0.
All right, we are moving on. We're going to switch around item 9B and 9C. So we'll move to Department Report 9C, multi-way stop sign control installation, Pedersen Road at Calle Almendro and Northwood Parkway. And the report is going to be done this evening by Jim Mashiko?
By your Public Works Director.
Okay. Right.
I'm sorry, Mr. Mashiko, Senior Civil Engineer Jim Mashiko, was actually in a traffic accident yesterday afternoon, and thankfully nobody was hurt, but he didn't make it into work today, so I'm just going to go ahead and do this report for him. And then John Halliwell is here if there's any detailed questions on any of the items that transpired at the Traffic Commission meeting. And I'll try to go through this relatively briefly. The item before you here is the consideration of a four-way stop sign control at the corner of Calle Almendro and Northwood Parkway. This particular project is a result of several accidents that occurred in the neighborhood, and then requests of the neighbors to look into the traffic patterns on Pedersen and to do some investigations as to what could be done to slow down the speeds in that area. The city traffic staff then had, there was a kind of an informal meeting with some of the neighbors out in the neighborhood. We walked the neighborhood and then conducted that investigation. The results of that investigation were presented to the Traffic and Transportation Commission at their September 2008 meeting, and the Traffic and Transportation Advisory Commission concurred with city staff in regards to the construction of a stop sign at the corner of Almendro and Pedersen. Just a couple of quick pictures. This is an eastbound view of Pedersen. The westbound view clearly showing that this is also a school crossing area. The multi-way stop sign control does not meet the traffic volume warrants that are typically met for four-way stop control. It is, however, very close. It does, however, meet both the sight distance requirements and the collision rates. And one of the items that council had asked staff to consider in the past was also proximity to schools, and so that's kind of an overriding consideration in this case. As we often do with traffic control measures, we try to look at an incremental approach rather than doing more than is required. And so in this case, that incremental approach would include putting the stop signs on Pedersen at Calle Almendro, installing an illuminated crosswalk, what we refer to as a smart crosswalk. We received grant funding for that. That would be constructed probably next summer. Enhanced enforcement of the speed limits in the area. We've also added some additional signing and striping out in the area with curve and intersection warning signs, and striped a bike path and yellow stripes down the center of the median to create kind of a narrowing of the roadway. Those would be the items that we would do at this point. In the future, depending upon the success of this project, we would also then consider the installation of radar speed feedback signs. And if none of that proved to be successful, then we'd look at modification and landscaping in the medians. And so with that, I'm more than happy to answer any questions on this project. And I know that we do have several of the residents here who want to comment also.
Ms. Bill de la Pena?
Thank you. Good evening, Mr. Watkins. I just have a question. We normally, every now and then, I should say, we receive requests from residents to put speed bumps in, stop sign, and there are cases when stop signs or any other measures are not warranted. And please correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe that complaints have been going on for a while, but that area was not deemed to warrant any measures or steps at that time.
That's correct. In the past, when we did the traffic counts, the counts were not as high as they are currently. Currently, they're within about 11%. And there's a number of warrants to be complied with for a stop sign. One of those warrants is volumes. The other warrant is sight distance. Another warrant is accident rates, and then consideration of pedestrians in the area. So in this case, it actually meets 3 of the warrants, which is the sight distance warrant, the accidents, and the school pedestrians. It does not meet the volume warrant, but it's very, very close. And so with this one, it was the opinion of our traffic engineers that given the totality of the situation out there, it did qualify. But they also, we also are asking council to adopt those findings in support of the stop sign.
Okay, so theoretically, we could have discovered those findings perhaps sooner.
Well, the more recent traffic counts we did are the ones that came up to within about 11%. My recollection is that previous counts that have been done in earlier years were even lower than that.
Thank you.
All right, we have 2 public speakers. Our first speaker is Julie Marculier. Well, I only know you by Julie, so I mean, I know your last name. I can't quite.
You don't have to say it. It's good. It's all good.
Good evening.
Good evening. Thank you so much for seeing us again. This is proof that persistence probably works more than you ever want to know. I'm here to thank you for looking at this. I'm here to thank the Traffic Commission for absolutely 100% backing what we're saying. And I'm here to tell you that we need to have that stop sign put in as soon as possible. There's still been accidents, there's still been problems, and regardless of the 11%, which seems to be so important, but it's not, there are so many children that walk across that street and up and down that street that not having it there is more of a hazard than anything else. And I just wanted to thank you guys for backing me up and for listening to me, and taking my thousands of emails and all the things that I've said, and I just would appreciate it if you went along with this and got me a stop sign, please. That's all. Less than a minute. Wow.
Do you have a question, Dr. Glancy? You did an outstanding job of rallying the neighborhood together, and I know that you had everybody over at your house to see what the problem is, and we went for a hike and looked at the sign, and I think you convinced all the traffic people. I know that it is a very accident-prone area, and I think they've come up with some good solutions, and I think you'll find some relief.
I want you to know I was driving home from picking my son up today, and he goes to Ladera, which is on Calle Almendra, and at one point I went to Vaughn's, and then I came back down Pedersen, and I was going 45, and the car behind me was so close to me I was going to ask for his name, because it was like, come on, guy. So people don't like to slow down there, so when they see that stop sign, they're going to know that they have to. So that's awesome. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Larry Malak. Good evening, Mr. Malak.
Good evening, Mayor and council members. I would like to encourage you, in fact implore you, to adopt the resolution as well. I live on that particular corner, and regardless of the number of accidents, the number of squeals and near misses is somewhat disturbing to many of us, and just a sight of things to come. I'd like to thank Mark Watkins and Jim Machiko as well for their careful analysis in walking the street and actually looking at some of the factors that really do matter there. And the line of sight is really critical. people tend to accelerate far too rapidly to get across that street because the line of sight is impaired. And it has to do with the curvature of the road, and it really does necessitate a stop sign there just for safe traffic of the bikers, the people coming off the hill in Northwood, and of course, the many people who walk that street, including students. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Malak. We also have two written statement cards, both in favor of the stop sign, and there's actually one person on here that made a comment, and I would hope Mr. Watkins can explain this again. How come in the valley every street has 35-mile-per-hour speed limit, and in our city it's 45 to 50 miles? Maybe you can explain. We've heard it all many times, but maybe you can explain to the neighbors.
I can't explain what they do in the valley, so I won't try to do that, but I can explain how we set our speed limits here. State law requires that the speed limits be set currently within 5 miles per hour of the 85th percentile speed. So what we are obligated to do, if we want to use radar to enforce the speed limits, is we go out and we do a speed survey where we use a radar gun and we analyze the speed of every vehicle on the street. And then at that point you determine the speed at which 85% of the vehicles are traveling at or below. That becomes your critical speed. And then you have to post within 5 miles an hour of that speed. So for example, if your 85th percentile speed is at 43, then the closest 5 is actually 45 miles an hour. Currently, the speed limit law that Councilmember Glancy has been working hard to get changed for us would allow us to round down to the nearest 5. So if this critical speed was 43, for example, we'd be able to round down to 40. And then after that 40, then we're allowed to take certain other factors into consideration. So if there's a certain number of homes that front on the street within a certain distance, if there's a certain number of pedestrians, bicyclists, other things, then if there's extenuating circumstances, items that aren't typically visible to a driver, sometimes that includes dangerous or unseen intersections, we can round down another 5 miles an hour. And so that's what the state law says. That's the same law that governs every city. And that's how we're obligated to set our speed limits.
Thank you for that explanation. Motion, Dr. Glancy?
Thank you, Madam Mayor, and I am pleased to say that the effort is still ongoing in getting that language change, and I think we're close. But it's my pleasure to recommend staff recommendation.
Comments to the motion? Ms. Bildo-Pena?
I will certainly support the motion, and I also would like to thank Mrs. Marcoulier for, pardon me? Coulier. Marcoulier? Marcoulier. Yes. That's not, I thought that's what I said, perhaps not. For your perseverance, as you said. We've had numerous neighborhoods come before the council or the traffic commission asking for changes that were not always granted, and I'm just very glad that you were able to just hang in there and make sure that what you needed was going to happen. So thank you again, and your neighbors as well. It does pay off when the residents do work together. So congratulations.
Vote, please.
Motion carries 3-0.
Item 9B. After all that work, that was it. Item 9B, Route 23 Freeway Sound Wall and Landscaping Update, and that will again be presented by Mr. Watkins, our Public Works Director.
Thank you, Mayor Irwin, members of the City Council. If I could, I'd like to also correct an earlier statement in regards to Wendy Drive. We're fortunate this evening. We've got Ravi Gate, who is the project manager with Caltrans, and then also I've got Mike Tuhidian here, senior civil engineer with City of Thousand Oaks. You asked about Wendy Drive and how long that would take. They quickly corrected me after I made my earlier comment, but the design and Caltrans approval portion for that project will be about 1.5 years. I had said it would be about 1 year. And then the construction period is estimated to be about 2 years. So it would be a total of about 3.5 years for finishing the Wendy Drive project. And I was being overly optimistic with my estimate of around 2 years, so probably about 3.5 on that one.
I just said ballpark, so that was
okay.
Still in ballpark, but thank you for that very accurate answer there. Thank you.
So this next item is an update on the 23 freeway sound wall landscaping. Just going to go through very quickly the history and where we currently stand with both the sound walls and getting some landscaping on the sound walls. The 23 freeway, of course, that project, fortunately, the construction went fairly rapidly, consisted of adding a lane in each direction and a few other accoutrements. During the planning and design phase of that, really the most often requested amenity on that project was sound walls and landscaping. We're fortunate that we did get about 14,000 feet of sound walls constructed within the city as part of that project. And those sound walls had an impact and caused the loss of a number of trees. And so we got some landscaping on the project, but the landscaping really was primarily an environmental mitigation measure for the trees that were lost. And due to funding on the project, and council probably recalls some of the funding issues, we were very fortunate to get that project funded and to get some federal money attached to it so that it went forward when it did. But it did go forward basically without landscaping except for the mitigation landscaping. This exhibit shows where those sound walls were built throughout the city. The sound walls to the south of the project are going to get some vines. Those are basically the sound walls from Page Lane to the 101 freeway. There's a small piece of sound wall that already existed. That sound wall is what's shown in orange. That was constructed by the city. Doesn't have vines, and then the rest of the sound walls built by this project are in blue, and those sound walls currently don't have vines. I'll talk about kind of the future plans for those later, but those are all the sound walls that were constructed as part of this project. The sound wall criteria that must be met, again, somewhat briefly, is that sound walls be reasonable and feasible. And this is important because it applies to current requests that we get for sound walls. It applies to some of the recent inquiries we've had on the Wendy Drive sound wall. But a sound wall is determined to be feasible if it can indeed provide at least a 5 decibel reduction at a maximum height of 16 feet. The maximum height is included to offset some of the complaints we've got on the 23 freeway. You can't build walls that are just of unlimited height because you start to get kind of a canyon effect or a tunneling effect along the freeway. And so over time it's been determined that if the wall has to be taller than that, then the wall needs to be moved out of the right-of-way. An example of this would be if the house sits considerably above the freeway, the sound wall would have to be too tall to be able to be effective, and so that wall would have to be moved up into somebody's backyard and built much closer to their house. In that case, all the neighbors have to agree because, you know, little pieces of wall wouldn't work. Sound walls are generally also built, try to build them within the Caltrans right-of-way, but sometimes, like I said, they end up having to be moved up. So the 23 freeway project now is basically complete. During the construction of the project, we had a number of requests from some of the neighbors in that area to look at additional sound walls. Caltrans did come out and do some additional sound monitoring. In one case, they actually extended the wall. That was on an Herbs Road, about 250 feet. That was found to be basically a design error. The initial sound studies had shown that that area deserved a wall, and the wall that was constructed there wasn't quite sufficient, and so they extended the wall a bit. In another case on White Cliff Road, during the planning and design phase, they went out and did the measurements. That area did not qualify for a sound wall at the time. Additional measurements were made during construction at the request of the neighborhood, and that neighborhood now would qualify for a sound wall. So that wall has been placed on a list for future sound walls. Kind of a good news, bad news. It does qualify, it's on the list, but there are a number of projects on the list and there's not a lot of funding attached to that, so that doesn't mean that there should be really any optimism that a wall would be built out there anytime soon. The other area that we got a number of requests for was the new Enclave neighborhood, which is north of Olson Road on the west side of the 23. And in that case, those homes were built subsequent to the design planning piece from Caltrans and don't qualify then for a sound wall to be constructed by the state. The landscaping that was included in the plans as mitigation was primarily a bunch of 1-gallon trees, primarily oak trees, but some sycamores and peppers and a few others mixed in. If you'll recall, earlier this year, the City Council agreed to upgrade those trees to 15-gallon and 24-inch box trees. And so the city did that at its expense. We contracted directly with a nursery to provide the trees and directly with Caltrans contractor to plant all those trees. And so we're able to get a number of larger mature trees planted during this project. Those trees were planted at the interchanges, and this location map shows all the interchanges where those trees were planted.
And in essence, they were planted at all the interchanges except for Sunset Hills, and Sunset Hills will be included as part of the follow-on project. I'll show a picture of that in a minute. Just a couple of exhibits real quick. This is Jan's Road, looking at the on-ramps, off-ramps, same type of thing. These are sycamores, oak trees, some sycamores, I think a couple of pepper trees at Arbalest. But these are the trees that were planted that were upgraded from the 1-gallon plant sizes. These ones are along Olson Road. And again, Olson Road area. And as part of the project from Page Lane south towards the 101, these are the vines that were planted. This gives you an idea of the vines, how they're planted on the back of the wall, and these vines need to grow up over the wall to be on the freeway facing side. So these ones were planted just in May of this year, but quite a substantial amount of growth, probably a little bit more than halfway up the back of that wall already within about 6 months. So the other major item that we've dealt with on this project is graffiti along the walls. The walls, again, we get a lot of requests for the walls, and then we also get complaints on the walls, and those complaints being the aesthetics, the graffiti, and then kind of the tunneling effect that those walls can create. The graffiti problem was much, much worse during construction. That's primarily because the walls were not sealed up. At the ends of the walls, the chain link fence wasn't connected, and the areas where there's maintenance access, some of those access holes would continue to be open for a while. Since the construction has been finished and the area has been primarily sealed up, the graffiti has abated dramatically. We still do, of course, get events of graffiti that come out on those walls, and Caltrans has been responsive in attacking that and mitigating that. Currently, it's their contractor that still has the maintenance responsibilities out there, and their contractor is getting out and removing the graffiti as it comes up. It's also worth mentioning that there are, of course, like with many governmental agencies, a number of restrictions on how they're doing that, and one of the restrictions that Caltrans has is that they're obligated to use recycled paint, and where that affects them is in matching the paint colors of the walls, because the base that they get isn't a pure kind of white tint, but they're getting kind of an off-white tint base from recycled paint. But we've been working with them trying to mix up larger batches so that they've got plenty on hand within their maintenance yard so that they can use the same color for all the graffiti eradication. And then the good news is that Caltrans has agreed to a follow-on project, and there'll be a project coming up this next summer to plant vines on all of the rest of the walls. Caltrans has set aside about $500,000 for that project. This will include all the walls that were constructed as part of the 23 freeway widening, and will also include the wall that already existed that was built by the city. That wall the expenses for that will be at the city's expense. So again, here's the map of all the sound walls. Every one of these walls will receive vines in the future. Those will help both the aesthetics, they'll help to minimize the amount of graffiti that those walls experience. And then at the Sunset Hills Boulevard, we'll be planting more trees. So here's Sunset Hills, just a quick little preliminary plan, but you'll be seeing oak trees, sycamore trees going in at that interchange. The key to a lot of these interchanges being able to be done is the city's getting out there and providing water, and so we're in the process of extending water lines, making sure water service is available. The vines that Caltrans is planning to plant are Boston ivy, so just a quick kind of artist rendering on an existing wall. I think this is at Los Flores, showing ivy taken from a picture of a previous wall and just kind of extending it down, but that's what the ivy would look like. And again, this is the wall that was planted in May of this year, showing the vines on the back side of the wall. And again, those have to grow up and over, since the wall on the freeway side has got paving all the way directly up to it. So the city will be working through the Caltrans cooperative agreement process. At this point, the city has not set aside enough money. We've got approximately half of the $390,000 will be required of the city. When the final design is complete, we've got an accurate estimate, then city staff will be coming back to the city council for approval of a cooperative agreement, and at that point, city staff will identify where the additional funds would come from, what other capital projects might have to be reduced in funding in order to fund this project. Plan to go to bid with this project next summer, and approximately a one-year construction period that would end by the end of the following year. So very quickly, the total project cost, about $890,000, a little more than half of that, $500,000 by Caltrans, about $390,000 by the city, of which we've got about half of that in a current capital project, and the rest we'd identify a funding source when we come back to the city council for authorization. And with that, we're more than happy to answer any questions.
Dr. Glancy?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Mr. Watkins, dissuading taggers from doing graffiti really is enhanced with the prompt removal of said graffiti. How responsive is the contractor in addressing removal when it's reported to them?
They've been very responsive. Just recently, we've had a number of incidents, and some of the incidents, they responded quickly. We weren't satisfied with the way they did the remediation. They didn't necessarily block it out, but they found it. We took some pictures of that, got it to Caltrans, and they were literally out there on a Saturday and got the work finished up. So part of, I think, what the contractors had to get used to is the higher standards in Thousand Oaks that they have to deal with in other places and what we're expecting from them. But most recently, they've been very responsive, and I've driven a number of times, made a purpose to go up and down and look, and they've been doing a good job of keeping the graffiti down.
Good. Is the mixing larger batches of paint going to take care of the problem in terms of dissimilar paint shades?
I hope so. I've talked to Caltrans maintenance engineers, and they said that they've got a couple of issues with that paint. One, that after they put it on, sometimes it'll look like it matches, and then it'll fade a little bit over time, so it doesn't match as much. They're struggling a little bit with that. I really think the ultimate answer is to get the vines on there so we're not having to deal with those all the time, because no matter how good a paint job you do, it's still a paint job on a masonry wall, and it's not going to match, and it just starts to look like a checkerboard over time.
You're mentioning vines gets me to the next topic. What kind of time frame are we looking at before the vines are an effective obstacle to taggers?
Before they grow all the way over, do you have experience with that, Robbie?
Well, vines are typically just like any other trees. If you look at the picture there, excuse me, I got a bad throat. One of the vines seems to be growing pretty well, pretty high, and the neighboring vine is, very short. So it depends on where it is, how much sun it gets, and so on. But the full-grown vine is supposed to be between 2 to 4 years.
So we're saying possibly 4 years before they're an effective barrier?
Possibly.
Okay. I've heard anecdotally that part of our problem in dealing with the graffiti is that there was a seal not applied that is supposed to either make it easier to remove the paint or make it less easy for the paint to stick originally. Is there truth in that, or is that anecdote only?
I'm not aware of that information. Let me get that.
I can tell you, I talked to the Caltrans maintenance engineer on that one. He said they've tried some different graffiti-proof coatings, I guess, throughout the state, and they've had limited success. I think basically just on the amount of sound wall that, what was it, 14,000 feet, I think I said that we constructed here, just the expense of coating all of that and whether or not it would work. What I was encouraging them to do is maybe just do it at the ends of the walls, which seems to be where we're experiencing the greatest amount of graffiti now, is that those areas that are the most accessible, that are near the on and off ramps. But statewide, they said they've had kind of some limited success with that type of coating, where presumably you can coat it and then you can either water blast it or something to get the paint to come off, or they're having to paint over it. But it sounds like a lot of them you had to then reapply that coating again. It didn't last through all the water blasting too.
I was going to ask if there's any way to speed this process up so that the graffiti is no longer an issue in the community, but it sounds as though we're really limited to how long, what the length of time is for the vine to grow. So,
well, once the contract is over, we'll try our best to keep the graffiti off the wall. But you're right, we need to have those vines grow up quick.
I agree. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. So 2 to 4 years for them to go for the vines to go, when you said full grown, you meant all the way to the other side?
That's what I heard from the landscape.
We need to make sure to put lots of fertilizer on them.
Right.
And water.
Yeah, need to be properly maintained, yes.
Okay. Well, I appreciate the Caltrans representative coming this evening, and I certainly appreciate everything we've done to improve the landscaping on the 23. Mr. Watkins, you guys have done a good job with that. Motion?
Sure, Madam Mayor, I recommend that we receive the report.
Vote, please.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Motion carries 3-0.
Department Report 9D, proposed Southern California Edison Moore Park Newberry 66 kV sub-transmission line. And Mr. Prescott will be presenting the report. Good evening, Mr. Prescott.
Good evening, Madam Mayor, members of the council. Excuse me. The city has recently received a notice from the Southern California Edison Company of construction of a new, what they are terming a sub-transmission line. This line would originate at the Moore Park Regional Substation, just at the westerly edge of the city of Moore Park on Highway 118. And it would follow a route from Moore Park to the Newberry Substation, which is located in the city of Thousand Oaks on Lawrence Drive. There is an existing 66 kV line along that same route. This project involves adding another 66 kV line, and the principal reasons for that are to handle the increased load and capacity requirements for the Canal Valley. The project also entails replacing the existing poles along this 9-mile route within the city of Thousand Oaks portion, which is about 3.5 miles. There is a mix of lattice steel towers, which would be replaced with engineered steel poles, which have a slimmer profile of about the same height or a little bit taller. And then there are existing wooden poles, I believe about 36. Those are mostly closer to the Newberry substation itself, and those would be replaced with a lightweight steel pole as part of the project. We have provided with your supplemental packet this evening some additional information about the project. The original report had indicated the project sequencing would begin in Moore Park and head southerly. Actually, it's the reverse of that. So the initial stages of the project in terms of pole replacement and stringing the new line would begin near the Newberry substation in Thousand Oaks and then move out from there. It's an approximately 2-year project that the Edison Company wishes to begin next month and conclude in roughly December of 2010. When staff evaluated this, and Edison is basically indicating to us that this project pursuant to PUC regulations does not require any kind of a permit from the California Public Utilities Commission. However, there is a process that the Commission has that requires notification of the public and local agencies and an avenue for protest or requesting a hearing if a party feels that the Edison Company has incorrectly stated that the project is exempt from the PUC permit requirement, and this is the area where we're focusing on, the project may have environmental impacts that should be looked at. So we did analyze the project. We talked to Edison representatives, and then actually this morning we met in the field with several Edison representatives and were able to provide some more information. One of the concerns that staff had was whether there would be a possibility of replacing, near the Newberry substation, there are 2 lines of poles running parallel that if you've been out there, you'll conclude as I did, it looks like a forest of telephone poles, and is there a way to, as part of this project, combine those into a single line rather than a double line? And we've answered that in the supplemental report there, the section on double row of poles, that basically each one of those rows of poles already carries a 66 kV line with a new additional 66 kV line coming in, and Edison's requirement that they cannot locate more than 2 of those lines on a single row of poles. There is a need for both sets of poles to be kept. They will be replaced with the newer lightweight steel poles, however. One of the other significant matters that we looked into was construction access. Most of the portion of the line within Thousand Oaks goes across city-owned open space, and these are in easements that the Edison Company already has for this purpose, and they do include dirt roads in some areas for access to the poles. We do not, at this point, have specific information from the company on how it intends to handle construction access. Some of the terrain is extremely rugged, and it's a pretty major construction project. We have a concern just looking at it from an open space standpoint and the city standpoint that the construction project is managed in such a way that it does not damage the environment, and that's really the principal issue that we want to resolve. In our meeting out in the field today, Edison gave us some information verbally and did commit to meet with us in the field and actually walk parts of the line where they feel they may need additional access roads to be cut. The other elements of the report deal with electromagnetic field compliance. That's somewhat of a controversial field that's been discussed in the past. The Edison is under California Public Utility Commission regulations regarding EMF compliance, which are stated on your packet page 128, and they do intend to comply with all of those regulations. And so our recommendation to the council was to consider this report and consider any supplemental information as we provided and any testimony you hear tonight, and then determine, if you determine appropriate, authorize filing a letter with the Public Utilities Commission requesting a hearing based on potential environmental impact. And that would be staff's recommendation pending any testimony you might have. We do have representatives of the Edison Company here. I believe they have speaker cards for questions, and so you may want to call on their expertise as well. And that concludes our report.
Thank you, Mr. Prescott. Questions? Dr. Glancy?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Mr. Prescott, how old is the science that's used in establishing EMF numbers?
How old is the science? I don't know the answer to that, but I do know that I believe that some of the people here with the Edison team have expertise in that area, so they may be able to answer that question.
Thanks.
We have 4 gentlemen here from Edison for questions only: Mr. Gonzalez, Mr. Harvey, Mr. Sias, and Mr. Glenn. I'm sure one of the 4 can answer that question.
Council members, Glenn Sias is our EMF manager, and I'm going to allow him to answer that particular question.
Good evening. The science that was used to develop the initial PUC's policy, which essentially requires that Edison take steps to reduce magnetic fields whenever we construct new power lines, was based on science in the 90s when we developed our first policy. Now, since then, the PUC looked into the issue in 2005 based on more recent science and found that this was the most appropriate way to address the EMF issue for California. They did take into consideration subsequent scientific reviews of the EMF literature that had come out since the 90s. So it is recent literature that's been looked into.
Thank you very much for the clarification. Appreciate it.
Any other questions? Ms. Bill de la Pena?
Good evening. I don't know exactly who would be able to answer this question regarding the cost of undergrounding, which is being mentioned as one of the reasons why you are proposing this particular project.
I'm Rudy Gonzalez, Regional Manager for Edison. We did talk earlier today about the cost of undergrounding with Mr. Prescott out in the field, and we did throw a number out there. Of course, it's all subject to final engineering, but the approximate cost, and a lot of it depends on the terrain, would be about $4 million a mile. And that's a very, very ballpark figure.
And what is it, 3.5 miles? I forget. I saw one
Within
that was-
the city of Thousand Oaks, about 3.5 miles,
Okay.
yes.
And that is cost prohibitive because,
We are primarily an overhead utility. We do abide by ordinances throughout the city. In the city of Thousand Oaks, we have an underground ordinance that dictates that 16,000 volts and below would be buried underground. However, 66,000 volt sub-transmission lines fall outside that scope. And so we would not typically bear the cost of undergrounding at the expense of all of our ratepayers.
okay, well, that's definitely something that we should address in whichever report we may or may not approve tonight.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, gentlemen. And our second speaker this evening is Mary Harris. Good evening, Ms. Harris.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. I just want to say, I went up to see the thing in Cal Lutheran, and I'll make it real quick. But we do need the new transmission lines built, and I can tell you why. It's going to help immensely, number one. Number two, it's going to take the burden off a lot of the power outages that we have had, and believe me, Rudy can verify. I won't say to him, he can verify all the times I've called him because of the power outages that we constantly are having all the time, 3 and 4 months out of the year. I mean, it just seems like it's like every other week or every couple of weeks I'm calling Rudy to say, Rudy, the power's out. And I think it's going to take a lot of the burden off of the other substations. So I know people don't like things like this, but I really think it's important to really look at what it will do to take the burden off of other substations and to stop the power outages all the time that we are constantly having. So I want to let you know, I think it's time to support something like this. Like I say, I know a lot of people don't like intrusion of power lines, they don't like this, they don't like that, but it will, at least take the bearing off a lot of power outages, believe me. And Rudy knows I've called him for time after time, and if it wasn't for him, I don't know what I would do, but he's been there when I've told him that the power's out constantly over where I live on Brazil, Moore Park, and all that. It's constantly going out, so this is something we need. Please, council, see what you can do to approve this so we don't have all these problems. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Harris. Ms. Filipina?
No, I was just ready to make a motion.
Okay.
I do concur with staff regarding the recommendation for this project, which would be to receive the report, and I would also ask that we send a letter to the Public Utilities Commission requesting a hearing on this matter, because obviously we need to investigate this further. This is a big project that could have adverse environmental impacts. It could also be beneficial, and I believe that we do need to investigate this a little further. So my recommendation, my motion would be to receive the report, and also ask that we send a letter to the Public Utilities Commission requesting a hearing on this particular project related to its potential for adverse environmental impact. And this report should also, of course, include any analysis in terms of the cost, and see whether it is truly cost prohibitive, whether there are any alternate plans that could be used.
Dr. Glancy? Okay. I think that's basically the staff recommendation. Yes.
Yeah, Madam Mayor, it is a staff recommendation, and I think it falls in line with what staff is looking for So I'll support the motion.
Vote, please.
Motion carries 3-0.
Okay, redevelopment agency reports, there are none. Committee, commission, and board reports. 11A, the Santa Monica Conservancy Advisory Committee. Dr. Glancy.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Councilmember Gillette and I had the opportunity to interview for the Santa Monica Mountains Conservancy and chose to reappoint Michael Blanton, or to nominate Michael Blanton to do a full 2-year term. Again, we were very pleasantly surprised. Not really, we were very happy to see so many very well qualified people apply. So it's a tough problem that we have in Thousand Oaks, but it's one that we absolutely love. I recommend that we approve the reappointment of Michael Blanton.
Ms. Bilda-Lapena?
I will support the motion. Mr. Blanton is quite knowledgeable. I've had the pleasure to work with him when I was a member on the advisory committee, and would recommend him highly as well. So therefore, I will approve of your motion.
Very good, then. Let's have a vote, please.
Motion carries 3-0.
Council issues and recommendations, item 12A, follow-up reports on meetings or conferences attended by council members. Item 1, I guess, what will we do with that one? Okay, we are just going to receive the report from Councilmember Gillette for the National League of Cities Public Safety, Crime Prevention, and Steering Committee Fall Meeting Update. Can we have a vote, please?
Motion carries 3-0.
And then item 12A, number 2, League of California Cities Annual Conference Update, and that is receive report, Fox and Gillette. So we're voting on receive report. Vote, please.
Motion carries 3-0.
Item 12B, bottled water research, continued from September 23rd, and that is Dr. Glancy.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. This subject has arisen quite a few times in the last year in various articles about the amount of energy that goes into the production of water bottles or plastic beverage bottles, and also the fact that in California, of the 30 billion bottles manufactured annually, 22 billion of them end up in the landfill, which is that's really untenable. The amount of energy required, or the amount of fuel required to manufacture those 30 billion bottles is about 1.5 million barrels of oil. So, for a city that touts itself as being very interested in green technology, I think that it's only incumbent upon us to see about our being able to reduce the incidence of plastic water bottles, in the City Hall anyway. It's a stab, maybe make people more aware of what the issue is. As an aside, too, the plastic water bottle unit price approaches about $10 per gallon, whereas in Thousand Oaks we have a very high-quality water, and it's less than a penny a gallon. So, from a financial standpoint, it just makes much more sense. And I would like to compliment staff on providing these very nice carafes and glasses. So I would recommend staff recommendation, points 1, 2, and 3.
Ms. Bilda-Lapena, do you have?
No questions at all. Just a comment that obviously there are other bottles available that are biodegradable, but those probably carry a higher price tag. But there are some plastics materials being developed and already on the market that actually break down in a landfill. So perhaps that's something we might want to look at as well.
Sounds fine with me.
And, I know with the bottles, it actually just gets to be a habit. We've stopped buying them in our house, and now the kids put the water in the glass again, just like the old days. So we have one speaker, Mary Harris.
Good evening, Mayor. I brought my bottled water to make a point. I want to let you know, Council, this bottled water thing is chitsy. I feel that the Council should not be taking bottled water away from the city. Tap water, I tried the tap water when I first moved to Thousand Oaks. I just don't like tap water. I drink bottled water, Tom Clancy, and I'm asking the Council to let people have a choice and to not take bottled water away from events at the city. Let people have a choice. If they want to have bottled water, that's their choice. They want to have a Pepsi, they want to have whatever, that's their choice. But I say bottled water is better for you. And please don't take bottled water away from anybody. And please don't take it out of the city. I think it is very healthy for you, in my estimation. And Tom, I would ask you, you're a dentist, you would think better than that. But like I say, don't take bottled water out of the city. Let us have a choice. That's what bottled water's for. I like my bottled water. So I'm asking the Council to please think about this and not take it out of the city, because, like I say, a lot of people just don't like tap water, and I like bottled water, and I think the city should let people have a choice of what they want at events, be it bottled water, be it whatever, Coke, whatever they want. But if they want bottled water, I think that they have the right to do so. But like I say, we should recycle the bottles. I would agree to that 100%. But just, don't take it out of the city and take it away from people. That's wrong. Like I say, let it alone. It's a chitsy way of doing things. Bottled water is good for you. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Harris. Dr. Clancy?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I would like to assure the last speaker that I believe I've demonstrated my value of individuals' rights in the past. And what this motion is about is merely to urge the city look at its own policy. I would certainly never, well, that's not true, but I'm certainly not suggesting that we look at any uniform ban or reduction of plastic bottles in the community. It's just city purchase. But with that said, I still do move staff recommendation points 1, 2, and 3.
I would just like to comment on the city's bottled water. It's actually just tap water. So it tastes pretty good, but this is just tastes like tap water. So this is just looking into what the best solution is. I don't think that the staff is going to come up with a recommendation to ban all water bottles at every city event. We're just seeing what would be a reasonable policy. Ms. Bill de la Pena?
Yes, in defense of Mr. Lancy, obviously this is not a decision tonight to ban all plastic bottles. It's just simply a recommendation that staff look into any alternatives. And I would like to offer a friendly amendment that would include looking at bottles that are made of biodegradable plastic. And also, I would like to echo Mrs. Irwin's comment. Numerous studies, scientific studies, have shown that the quality of bottled water is hardly any better than that of tap water. So, seriously. And I have a water filtration system in my house, so I do drink all the tap water. I hardly use plastic, but even so, I would nonetheless encourage you to really perhaps look up some of the studies that have been done that say that bottled water really is no different or not much better than tap water. And then that friendly amendment, how about that?
If I may comment, the amendments is fine. I would like staff to look at the carbon footprinting associated with those types of bottles too, but that's fine.
Thank you.
Vote, please.
Motion carries 3-0.
Item C is review of Triumpho Sanitation District service delivery options and rates. And yes, am I missing something? Oh, okay. Dr. Glancy, are you reporting something? I don't.
I may
You're the one
be.
that's on your own, baby.
I may be.
Okay.
I want to give just a few words about Triumpho Sanitation District. TSD was formed in about 1963, and it was to accommodate the eastern portion of Thousand Oaks, Bell Canyon, and Oak Park and Sherwood. About 10% of the city's total wastewater was allowed to go to Tapia wastewater treatment plant because of geography and gravity. Otherwise, there would have had to be a mechanism to pump the effluent up, or the, not the effluent, but the wastewater back uphill and over to Hill Canyon. The governance since TSD was formed, for the most part, for most of the last 40 years or so, has been a representative from the County Board of Supervisors, a representative from Ventura Regional Sanitation District, a representative from the City of Thousand Oaks, and 2 elected board members currently elected at large, and both of them being from Oak Park. TSD is in a joint agreement with the Las Virgenes Municipal Water District. It releases, the water district through the Tapia wastewater facility releases the effluent for 5 months of the year into the Malibu Creek. For 7 months of the year, they have to recapture all of that, or capture all of that, and then divert it into other means, use it, either sell it or not uncommonly put into the ocean, which in my mind is a rather considerable waste. Thousand Oaks residents pay $25.40 per month for sewer. Those of our residents who are served by TSD pay $44 a month for sewer. So after 45 years, I think that while the governance has provided reasonable representation for our residents, I think it's not inappropriate for us to look at alternate means of providing the same service, possible additional uses of the recycled water, which I think is extremely important within the city's boundaries. And this is in light of the same type of thing that we've done with our fire study and our police study and several other studies. So I think it's only appropriate after 45 years that we take a look at this and see if there's another way to do the job better. We might very well find that this is serving us quite well. But it'd be interesting to know, it'd be interesting for us to identify why the rather extreme difference in sewer rates. Would be one of the things I'd like to see explained. So with that, I'd like to recommend, move the staff recommendation.
Ms. Bildova-Pena?
Thank you. I do have a question for Mr. Glancy regarding the recommendation. If staff came back with a viable alternative and with a plan to do what is being proposed here, would that in essence then separate the city from TSD, from the Triumpho Sanitation District, or would it just break up the sanitation district altogether?
Well, I don't think it would break up the sanitation district. It still is existing for the service of Oak Park and Bell Canyon and Sherwood. My thought is it would separate us from the sanitation district. I think that it's rather, I think one of the things that's really lurking is that we release our effluent from Hill Canyon into the creek. It goes down Camarosa ag interests, and we are picking up about $1 million for that. Okay, the problem is that Las Virgenes, or Tapia, is releasing into the Malibu Creek. There are going to be some rather stringent requirements on what happens to that effluent, very, very possibly. they will not be able to release anything into the creek, and then they'll have to find ways to use it. If they can't sell it or they use it in other means, injecting it, they'll put it out in the ocean, and that's a terrible waste for a product or for a resource that's extremely valuable and very scarce.
Thank you.
So you've made the recommendation?
Yes, I have.
All
Yes,
right.
ma'am, I have.
Vote, please.
Motion carries 3-0.
Item 13A, City Manager. Follow-up requests from the public, state budget cuts and potential impacts on the City of Thousand Oaks, and announcements and upcoming issues. Can you cover all that?
Madam Mayor, members of the council, I certainly can. No additional follow-up comments on the state budget. Well, we have a state budget now, sort of. On September 24th, the governor did sign the state budget. It was a record 85 days late, and with that, the governor vetoed a record 35% of all bills that were proposed, and he reviewed over 800 bills in a 6-day period. So what does it mean for the City of Thousand Oaks? It meant that we, like a lot of cities, have barely escaped hits to our general fund. The Proposition 1A that was approved by the voters, which had protections for local governments, again paid off. So our general fund is okay for the time being. Unfortunately, our redevelopment agency, like many in California, has suffered a one-year hit. Redevelopment agencies across the state suffered $350 million of theft, if you will, payments that have to be made and not to be paid back. They're not loans. And for the City of Thousand Oaks, it's a $1.3 million hit out of the redevelopment's fiscal year 0809 budget. That means $1.3 million less is available for public infrastructure improvements in our community. There's also a potential litigation being contemplated by the California Redevelopment Agencies Association, and we are studying that, and I have shared with the council that we may join in that, or we are supportive of the lawsuit, but we may at some point be asked to join in, so we'll keep an eye on that. The state is still in a budget turmoil. You've probably read in the papers that the state was contemplating getting in line behind a lot of the banks on Wall Street to be bailed out because of some of their short-term cash flow problems. However, that appears not to be the case at the moment. So we'll continue to monitor that, provide updates, and do the best we can to stay on top of it. Announcements, upcoming issues tomorrow, which is Wednesday, October 15th at 9:30 a.m. We'll be celebrating the dedication of the Transportation Center. You know, it actually says 10:30 in my notes here. I don't know why I said 9:30, but or whatever time I said. So it's at 10:30 a.m. We also will be graced with the presence of the governor tomorrow, but not for this event. He'll be in town, I think it's scheduled, I want to say 10:45 or 11 a.m. At the Canal Creek South site. That's the staging area. You might have noticed that we have dozens and dozens of fire engines there. The governor is scheduled to be there tomorrow to, I guess, participate in acknowledging the folks working out there, but to go on an actual helicopter trip viewing the and doing an assessment of the fire situation throughout our region. That may change. Upcoming council agenda items worth noting at this time. The next council meeting will be on October 28th. Two department reports worth noting. One is the financial strategic plan update. We'll just keep coming at you with finance stuff at each meeting. This is the culmination of over a year's worth of work. So Candy and her crew will let you know where things stand and where we're going. We also, we may have an update, another utility issue, the proposed Edison Presidential Electrical Substation near the Reagan Library. We may have to move that one meeting because we're still gathering information, but we do owe the council and the community an update on that. On November 18th, we have one public hearing at this point dealing with water rate adjustments. This is the pass-through because our water suppliers have increased the cost of the water we purchase, and we do need to legally, we have to pass that on. We will also be holding a workshop on the housing element. On November 25th, I just want to note that tentatively we have scheduled the lease agreement between the city and the school district for the Thousand Oaks Child Care Center. So that is it by way of city manager follow-up.
Ms. Bilbao-Pena?
I have a question for Mr. Mitnick. Will we receive or have a discussion on perhaps prioritizing the redevelopment affected projects because of the $1.3 million reduction for the fiscal 08-09 budget? Do we have to reprioritize?
Well, we can get back to you on that. We're not sure at this point which projects are impacted, but at the appropriate time, we would definitely come back to council. So,
Dr. Glancy?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Mr. Mitnick, I've heard some talk about the redevelopment agency or parties associated with urging a suit prohibiting the governors from getting the redevelopment funds. Is that true?
That is indeed correct. The California Redevelopment Agencies, they had I think they're having a meeting this week. I'll follow up, but yeah, they are contemplating filing a lawsuit arguing that Prop 1A was supposed to protect California redevelopment agencies as well as the general operations of cities, saying that they're an extension, because the redevelopment agency is indeed the city. There's a separate legal distinction, and the governor's office in the state was saying, no, you don't need to do that because you'll be covered anyhow when we wouldn't do this to you. What we've learned over the decades in local government is don't trust the state under any circumstances unless it's in writing, or go to the voters directly and have the voters protect their local tax dollars. So yeah, there is definitely a lawsuit being contemplated. What we'll do is we'll contact tomorrow the California Redevelopment Association, or California Redevelopment Agencies Association, find out where they are, and share that information with the council. And if need be, we'll put it on an upcoming agenda.
Thank you very much.
Ms. Albano, do you want to announce the closed session, please?
Yes, thank you very much. There's two closed session items. One is conference with legal counsel, existing litigation. They're both conference with legal counsel on existing litigation. The first case is Vallecito Mobile Estates versus the City of Thousand Oaks, and that is pursuant to Government Code Section 54-956.9, subsection A. The second case is Weatherly versus City of Thousand Oaks, again, the same Brown Government Code section. And there will be no need to report anything out from this. Thank you.
We have 3 adjournments this evening. Our first presentation is in honor of Mike Garcia, brother-in-law of city employee and senior analyst Stan Hakes. Mike Garcia was a man well known for his love of family, kind heart, and deep friendships. He met his wife Kathy while they were in high school, and they were married in 1967. Following high school graduation, Mike became a machine shop trainee at Talley Corporation in Newbury Park, and in 1964, Mike was drafted into the U.S. Army, where he was enlisted as a paratrooper for the 101st Airborne Division, the Screaming Eagles. He proudly served his country in Vietnam and then returned home to raise a family. His greatest joys were raising his 2 sons and watching his 6 wonderful grandchildren grow up. We would like to express our deepest sympathies to Mike Garcia's family. Our second adjournment is in memory of Virginia Pellegrino, grandmother of city employee and senior building maintenance technician Mike Pellegrino. Born in Hammond, Indiana, Virginia's family then moved to Italy, where she grew up. By 1953, Virginia was married to Joseph, and they had 4 children. Together, their little family moved to the Chicago area, and in 1978, they became residents of Newbury Park. Virginia took great pride and joy in being a homemaker, and she also made time to volunteer for various organizations, including Mary Health of the Sick. Virginia passed away at the age of 91. She will be deeply missed by her family. On behalf of the City Council, we send our sincerest condolences to Mike Pellegrino and his entire family. Our final adjournment this evening is in honor of Carolyn Rear, mother of city employee and library director Nancy Sever. Born in New London, Connecticut in 1919, Carolyn lived in Thousand Oaks for the past 2 years. Prior to that, she was a resident of Santa Maria, California. Carolyn was by profession, a real estate escrow officer. She loved to travel, cook, and garden in her spare time. She will be deeply missed by her children, Nancy and Scott, and 2 grandsons, Ben and Chris. We would like to express our sincerest sympathies to Nancy and her family. And we are going to adjourn to our regular meeting on October 28th. Good night, everybody.